All right, so let's get started. So this webinar today it's a pretty important topic, and it's something that I've seen the best attorneys do that get jobs, and it's called lock-in. And I think once you understand the subject matter and learn a lot about it, it's going to change how you search for a job forever, and then also how you turn interviews into jobs, and also even how you get interviews and what you're able to do with them. And it's based on a lot of the tactics that insurance people use, different types of salespeople use, and it works very well. And the more I think about it, then I was thinking about this a little bit before this webinar, literally almost all the most successful job seekers that I know at a very high level, meaning people that are gotten the best jobs in the top New York law firms and Los Angeles law firms as laterals, I'm sure it works for law students too, but as lateral attorneys, really understand this topic. And one of the things that's interesting is I remember when there's been recessions and there was no hiring, or when the person is too senior and doesn't feel like they can get a job, when they're out of another practice setting, which becomes very difficult to get jobs in. This is something that I think works really well. A couple of notes about today's webinar. This is, I guess, our last webinar of the year. And this is a good one to be on, but just a couple, and it's a live webinar. After the webinar, we'll take questions, as many as you have. And I know a lot of people might not be working today, so it's a good time to stick around for questions and ask them. Another thing I just wanted to bring up, and I'll talk a little bit about this later in the webinar, but the end of the year is always a really good time to set goals. And I'll talk a little bit about goal setting, because very few attorneys actually have goals. They don't write them down. They don't know where they're going. And the most successful attorneys that I've found, it's very rare, but they set goals for themselves, and then they refer to those goals weekly, monthly, and they look at how they're on track with that. So I'll talk a little bit about goal setting today, but these two things we'll talk about: goal setting, and I'll probably do a webinar maybe even next week about goal setting. But these two tactics that we'll talk about today, the goal setting, and then also this career lock-in, are important. I'm not going to talk a lot about goal setting today because that's not what this is about. But the big thing to understand with goal setting is if you don't have goals, then you're just going to be part of someone else's goals. So that means if somebody wants to make a lot of money as a partner, you're working for them. You're part of their goals. If somebody wants to close down or let people go because they don't have enough people and because they have not enough work, then you're part of the firm's goals. So you need to understand setting goals and how it works and how much it can change your career and your life. And that's very important. Okay, so some of the smartest and most dangerous people in the world that I found, people that I bought things that I don't need from, where I've spent money I shouldn't have spent, where I've gotten into trouble buying very expensive things that I probably shouldn't have bought, are insurance salesmen, copier salespeople, and auto salespeople. And they all, the best ones, all do something that I would call lock-in. And I've made up this term, but if you understand how this topic and then how these people in these different professions are operating with this tactic, then you can have a very good career. And almost certainly when you go into interviews, you'll get more jobs. When you even trying to get interviews, you'll be very successful. And just as I said earlier, this particular tactic has been used against me, and I've fallen for some of the dumbest things with buying cars and buying insurance and buying copiers. I've bought copiers at some points that have been $15,000 or $20,000 a month for printers with copiers. Just really dumb mistakes. Understanding what people in these different professions do and how they do that is very important. It can help you a great deal. So the first thing I'll talk about are insurance salesmen and learning a little bit about what they do. And this is also a topic you can do. And this webinar, by the way, is about sales and how people sell things. But as an attorney, your responsibility and what you should be doing is being able to sell yourself. You also need to sell jobs and things to other people. So you need to be able to sell your legal work. You need to be able to sell yourself. You need to be able to sell your firm. And honestly, in the whole American history of the country is based on people being able to sell things, the Constitution, and then people rising from poverty to to success are able to sell things. Understanding how you can sell things and how you can sell yourself is important. And the first one I'll talk about is insurance salesman. Several years ago, I was sitting in the office of an insurance salesman. I'm not sure how I got there, but I remember, but it doesn't matter. It was someone that I'd met at a conference. I was working for him. And this guy was absolutely no ordinary salesman. He sold so much insurance that he owned 3 jet airplanes, which is probably pretty excessive. And then he was actually worth a few $100 million. And he had made all this money selling insurance from a relatively small and uneventful office of maybe 5 or 6 people, if that, in close to San Diego, California. And it took me about a 4-hour drive in traffic to see him, to get there. We'd set up a meeting, been set up for a meeting by someone that I knew that I'd met at a conference. And for me to drive someplace, take a day off from work and drive 4 hours to go see someone I hardly knew is someone that obviously was able to get my attention and taking a day off from work and so forth. And I like meeting successful people. I like meeting them, but to go meet this guy was out of the ordinary because there's plenty of successful people I can meet in LA. And I was there because he thought that he needed my help. And at the time, and this was a long time ago, and I was doing well at the time, but he had heard about how you can market things on the internet and get business that way. And he had made all this money selling insurance, and it's not normal insurance. He was selling life insurance and a very specific kind. And he was selling it to acquaintances and people that he knew and people that he networked with. And he thought that he and I could do exciting things together and that I could join him in the insurance industry, which was not something I would do, but this is what he said. But because he was connected to this friend, I met him to talk about the internet and how he could market his business. And again, at this particular point in time, everybody was on the internet, but this guy was older and didn't really understand it. And just someone to me helped him on the internet wasn't something I would normally do. But the idea, the way he got me to come see him was just absolutely brilliant and getting me motivated to spend 8 hours in traffic. And was the reason because of how much I thought I could learn from him. And I had some questions, and that's one of the reasons I went down. And these questions just really surprised me. And they were questions that I wanted to understand because it didn't seem to make sense that someone could sit in a small office and make this kind of money. And just as an aside, I knew he was making that kind of money because my friend knew all about it and was working for him. And not only that, but the guy talked about when I got out of the meeting, which one of his jets we would go on a trip with. You wondered yourself, how does a man make this kind of money? Like, how does someone with no significant education amass this kind of money? How does someone make this kind of money, like on their own, selling insurance, which anyone here, by the way, on this webinar, I'll just completely honest with you, you could sell insurance, anybody could, but what is it that separates someone that does so well from someone that doesn't? And I'll tell you a little bit about that in a few minutes, but how does someone go to these kind of heights of success doing something that anybody can do? How does someone do that? How does someone that just has a telephone and a notepad on his desk make this kind of money? And when I say hundreds of millions of dollars, what I'm saying is he might have been doing this type of job for less than 10 years and hit amass this kind of money. So how does someone make this sort of money selling insurance? And again, this guy's offices were nothing. That there was nothing impressive. If you were to come into his office, you wouldn't think there was anything special about him. And this empire was built on 3 secretaries and a couple of part-time insurance agents. And when I got into the office, the friend of the insurance agent who had accompanied me down to see him started talking about something called the John Hancock, which is some incredible insurance policy that only granted the close associates of the most successful insurance agents in the country, I guess. And apparently all you had to do was spend $100,000 in the policy. And then in 2 years, John Hancock would buy it back for $250,000, which obviously that's a pretty good return on your investment. this sounded too good to be true for me and I wanted one. And I was not there to buy insurance. It was just something that was dropped and suggested to me. But within moments of arriving in this office, I was hungry to get this insurance policy. After all, if I could spend $100,000 and get $250,000 back in 2 years, that's obviously something that would be very good. And then my friend went and mentioned that I wanted one of these to the secretary there. And I was told that maybe one would possibly be available. And then I was told by that if the insurance agent that made all this money really liked me, he might be able to get me one. So I'm not sure of how this played out exactly, but within moments of arriving in the insurance agent office, to meet him, I was very eager to get this insurance policy and also learn about his success secrets. But not only that, I was eager to be very nice to him if he could give me this opportunity to make all this money on an insurance policy. And after about 20 minutes, where I was sitting there wondering if I could get this insurance policy, if someone offered you to invest that was reputable with a big company like John Hancock, that you could put in $100,000 and get $250,000 back, you would be pretty excited. And the insurance agent was someone I liked a lot. When I finally met him, he had a lot of charisma. He seemed very interested in what he was doing. He was just I don't know how to explain it, but he had this California look, healthy, and he had curly hair, but middle-aged, just someone that seemed very interested in what he was doing. He didn't seem flashy or anything, and did not seem dishonest. And he didn't seem that he didn't have my best interest at heart. But only a few minutes into the meeting, I discovered that his business was fine. He didn't need to spend the time getting online and that sort of thing. He already had plenty of clients, and he didn't need to learn something new because he had something that worked. And I realized he wasn't really interested in the internet because all we kept talking about was insurance. And I learned later on that I'd really been tricked into going down there. He acted like he was interested in the internet. He acted like we could make all this money if I put him on the internet, that I could share in the success. And so I felt very excited about showing someone how to put a website online and collect information with forms and so forth. And I realized that learning about the internet was really just a pretext to get me down there. And when we walked out of the office, as I was leaving, the agent told me that he would fly me in his jet down to an insurance conference in Dallas in the next few weeks to learn more about insurance. And I just never ended up hearing anything. I thought that sounded fun to go to this conference. But what did happen is that a couple of days later, a couple of associates called me, or actually it was the next day, to discuss insurance. Within a few weeks, I found myself having a medical exam. A doctor came to my house and weighed me and took my blood and all this stuff. And then I signed for a big life insurance policy that required me to make payments on it for nearly 20 years, not an insignificant amount of money. And I bought this big insurance policy. I don't know, when I think about it, I realized that I was doing it to protect my family and to have assets in the future. And if I died, and I was so up at them. But I also bought it because this question of helping with the internet and so forth was still open. And the idea was that I was just showing my support for this business by buying this insurance policy. At least that's how I felt at the time. And so now it's not a 1, 2, or 3 year policy, a 20-year policy. And meaning I'm obligated to spend a significant amount of money each year for this insurance policy. And I'm still almost trying to figure out how I purchase it to this day, because I normally wouldn't purchase something like that. Never thought about it. And certainly it's just money you spend and you never get it back. And so unless you die, and at the time, the odds of me dying in 20 years were pretty slim, and they probably still are. I'm not going to knock on wood, but at the same time, when I signed this, the insurance agent told me that he's going to get back to you about this internet thing as I was signing the first of many checks for this insurance policy. And I never heard back from him on the internet or anything whatsoever. So I want to tell you about what happened here and why this is a something that when I explain it to you that you can actually use in your job search and meeting people and getting positions that other people don't necessarily get. And the other thing I want to stress to you is this particular tactic is something that I have seen the best job seekers in the legal profession do it, and they use it to get jobs, but they also use it to get clients. And this particular way of getting clients also works. So if you're working in a law firm, as I've said many times, you have two choices. You can work for the law firm, or the law firm can work for you. And so what does that mean? If you have a lot of business when you go into a law firm, then the law firm's really there to provide you support. They're there to provide you associates, and partners go and leave firms if they don't have good associates. They're there to provide you a brand. They're there to provide you secretaries and office space and IT. So that's what a law firm does for attorneys with a lot of business. And if the attorneys don't like that service with a lot of business, then they go to other firms. That's why partners move. If you're just an associate or a senior associate or a counsel or something, then you're working for the law firm. So you can, if you understand sales and you understand the stuff that I'm telling you right now, and you start learning about this and attending these webinars and really invest in yourself and these kind of lessons, then you're going to be able to have a law firm work for you. And so this stuff is very important. It can basically determine the course of your life and your career. So you can be more effective, you can have more confidence, and you don't have to worry about things like getting laid off or your branch office closing or getting too senior in your law firm and not having a job anymore. This stuff is stuff that very few people understand. And if you understand it, it could change your life. So what is the lock-in that insurance person was doing? Well, what I learned later is that every time that I make a payment on this insurance policy, which is $10,000 plus per year, I don't want to get into it, but every time I make a payment, that insurance agent gets paid, meaning they get money every time I make a payment. And so that person, that insurance agent that signed me up for this insurance policy is going to get a percentage of the checks that I send to this insurance company every year for 20 years. And what's also interesting is that the more time goes by, getting new insurance gets more expensive. What happens is, for example, if you purchase insurance when you're 40 and the policy goes for 10 years and you're 50, it's a 20-year policy. Instead of the insurance policy being, say, $12,000 a year, if you get new insurance, then it might be 20, because for $10 or $20 million policy. So that what they do is you have the lower premiums if you get it early. You can't get rid of the insurance if you get a new policy. If you try, they will explain this to you, because they'll say you're never going to get as good insurance again. The new policy will be more expensive because you've gotten older. And the older you get, the more expensive your insurance gets. And in addition, every time you get a new insurance policy, you have to get a medical exam. The insurance is just easier to get because you get locked in. And so the idea here is that what the insurance agent's doing is they get you locked into something and make you have to stay with it so they can continue making money. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what happened with this particular policy and what other people do, and why the strategy that was followed is just amazing. And it's important to understand that this is something that this agent, the way they were able to get me in there, the way they were able to get me excited, the way they were able to get me a policy, all this stuff is related to this tactic of locked in. So I'm going to explain to you about this a little later, but just keep in mind that I ended up getting locked into spending over $250,000 over this period of time. And that's a lot of money. And it's something that the insurance agent was able to get done by the things that they did. So here's another one. Copiers are not as popular as they used to be, but early in my career, I leased lots of copiers. At one point, I think I was spending on printers and copiers tens of thousands of dollars a month. I said earlier it might have been 15, but I'm thinking about another machine I bought that was like 20,000. So it was a lot of money. And around the same time that I had purchased this expensive insurance, a copier salesperson who'd sold me a very expensive copier had friended me on Facebook. And the copier that I purchased was $300,000. It was a very advanced copier and did a lot of really cool things, but the cost was not the issue of the copier. The issue was that each time I turned on the copier, so there was some sort of lease payment on the copier, and then at the end of the lease, you could buy it for $1 or something. But the real issue was that each time I turned on the copier, started charging me money, and it was connected to the internet. So it would actually charge me for these copiers in real time. And for every page I printed, it charged me. It charged me money when if I used 2 colors, it would charge me more than 1. Or if I used 5, it would charge me for 5 colors. And it would charge me money if I printed on one side, and it would charge me even more money if I printed ink on more than 20% of the page. So there were ways that it charged me for that. And it charged me automatically for service. When this copier needed service, it would actually automatically send a message to headquarters and service people would come out. So this machine just kept charging me money. I couldn't believe it. It was just charging me. It was incredibly expensive. If someone would sit there and print 20 pages or something, which people would do, but everyone was printing things. They were printing things in color. They were doing all this stuff. So I eventually had to stop using it because this machine was just, it had figured out how to charge me for so many things. It was an evil genius. And I'm not a big Facebook user, but at the time I was monitoring advertising campaigns that our business was doing on Facebook. So I was there a lot as we were getting this started up. And then I started, this copier salesperson, that a friend of me, started sending me all sorts of updates. She was on a cruise. She was a nice woman or girl. And she'd been on, or her boyfriend had been on, I don't know, Millionaire Bachelor or something, and had won, and which was funny because she was dating him at the time. And then she ended up breaking up with him because he won this comp. He met some other woman. And so she'd send these updates about hiking in Nepal. She'd send updates about redecorating her house. She said updates about her looking for art in New Orleans. Despite the fact that she was in her mid-30s, she was making a very good living, obviously, with all these trips and beautiful house and so forth. And when I finally realized how well she was doing, she announced on Facebook to all her friends that she was not using her new vacation condo at Mammoth, which is a ski resort. She said she wasn't using enough and rented to her friends for $500 a night if they wanted to use it. And so this whole thing left a very strange taste in my mouth. And I'll tell you why, because I was struggling to pay for this ridiculous copier. Not only was I paying these very expensive lease payments, and this was not an ordinary copier. It was huge. And because you could print things on it. It's a very interesting copier. But not only was I having to work hard to pay for this copier, I was off working 6 days a week and basically a slave to this copier while she was out shopping for art and skiing her condo in the second home. When I say the copier is expensive, what I'm saying is not only was I paying lease payments, but these other payments that just to keep the thing going were hundreds of dollars a day. It was very expensive. And it was almost incredible. And one day I'm sitting in my office and one of my employees came in and he was looking for a raise or something. I don't remember exactly what happened. And he told me he could make $800,000 a year selling copier. And I was $800,000 a year selling copiers. And again, this was a long time ago. This was 15 plus years ago. It was a long time ago. And this guy was sitting in my office asking for a raise. And at the time, I thought he was nuts, but he had learned this. I guess he knew people that also sold copiers and made this kind of money. And he had the belief that, and I believe that that's what they could make. And now they probably make even more. So this is something that you need to think about. So how does Harrison get locked in to buying insurance for 20 years or to signing up for a copier that's costing $15,000 plus per month with lease payments? How does this happen to someone? How does this happen to someone who, for all intents and purposes, is a pretty savvy business person? How does this happen? And so why do copier salespeople make so much money? How can you make $800,000 a year selling copiers? And so this, by the way, should make you angry, because you should think, if I'm working in a law firm or in the legal industry, I've gotten all these degrees and I've worked hard and billed a lot of hours. But how do people that don't have any education or any specific education, the copier saleswoman actually did have a decent education. I think she went to University of Rochester. She was from Rochester and I think was a good student and may have been an athlete or something there. But for the most part, there was no need to have an education. So what are these people doing? They're making money every time you make a payment on the copier. Every time you make you make a copy, they make a percentage. And their job is to keep the relationship going. So you continue to release your copier. That's why she was making friends with me on Facebook and sending all these updates and being my friend. She wanted to get a percentage of everything I spent, and which is smart. So she has incentive, or did have an incentive, to keep me locked in, to be her friend, to get me to relate to her on a personal level, meaning talking about her boyfriend and her hobbies and her skiing. And because she wants to get me locked in to using her indefinitely. And this is what a copier salesperson does. They sign you up for a contract, and the contract just keeps going and going. And by the time the copier wears out, you pay it off, the salesperson is there with a new machine that's even better than the old one. And it never stops repeating itself. The machine gets better and you want the new one. And it's just like that with cars. Some people will buy a car, it's very common, with payments, and they'll get a new one when the new model comes out that's better than the old model, and they'll buy that. So this is what people do. And people, in that particular instance, if a car salesman, for example, you're buying cars from them every year or every couple of years when the new models come out, and this is what the manufacturers are doing. If you like a brand, then you'll want the new brand, and you'll keep buying new brands over and over again as they come out. And you may do this for the rest of your life. This is a process where people get you locked into something. And by the way, just to give you some understanding of what's possible, I was amazed when I found out how much some of these salespeople make in auto dealerships. Some of them, and I'm not trying to make you mad, they come out of high school and they learn the ropes, and within a few years are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, just as young kids that don't go to great schools, they're not practicing. And so you can, if you understand sales, you really, your life and your career in the law, especially where you need a degree, can be astronomical. And you get locked in, and you get locked in to these payments. You get locked into working basically of being in a position where you're always making money. So auto sales, another one. So I used to like Mercedes. I don't really anymore. I don't know why, but over the course of 15 years, I purchased 4 cars from the same auto dealer in downtown Los Angeles, and I would lease them or purchase them, but they would always give me low monthly payments, or what seemed like low monthly payments, in order to induce me to purchase cars. And so every few years I would go in there and purchase a new car. And this salesman was from India. He was a nice guy. He's still there. His name is Raj. He's in downtown Los Angeles Motors, and he's been there for probably decades. And he would always brag to me about how much money he was making, how he was flying his family back to India first class, which is probably per ticket, I would say $10,000, and how he was a member of this expensive country club and all this stuff. And despite the fact that I might have been leasing a car that was $100,000, I was actually a little bit intimidated by, he told me about his house, this multi-million-dollar house by this guy. I was like, wow, he's very successful. Didn't dress well, but was likable. And so several years, this was pretty funny. There was the body style that I was driving at the time, these S550s, which are just this kind of sedan one. And this car was a replacement of an old body style. He called me and said he had only one of these. It was what's called the launch edition. If I wanted this car, I had to get down to the dealership right away. He told me I was his favorite customer, and he was holding it especially for me. I'd been up very late the previous night working on something business related and was disoriented, but I decided to drive down there. And within a few hours, I traded my old car off a lease and gotten this S550. I got to the dealership, and he said it was selling for $20,000 over the list price because it was so new and exclusive. And as I negotiated this lease, I told him that I refused to pay more than list for the car and wanted to have a buyout that was based on the list price of the car if I wanted to get out of the lease. And he agreed, and I felt as if I was getting a very good deal on the car since it was $20,000 over list. But a few years later, I realized that the lease price on the car, based on the lease price of the car, but the interest rate I was essentially being charged on the lease was something like 30%. And so over 4 years, the payments I made would actually be more than the list price of the car. And then I would have to turn it in or buy it for $50,000 or something. So they were able to actually get the $20,000 over list by charging me so much on the lease. Eventually, I called up Mercedes because I realized how ridiculous this was. And I converted the lease into a purchase at the price that I'd agreed instead of making these lease payments. And this actually reduced the payments to 3.9% for the interest rate. And then for days, the salesperson was calling me and trying to talk me out of doing this. And he had one argument after another, but none of these arguments really made any sense. I paid too much for the lease. He knew it and I knew it. And then he eventually just came by my office and was, let's have lunch and be friends, that sort of thing. And he told me that he would make thousands of dollars in fees for signing me up for the lease as long as I kept it for at least 6 months. That's what he was required to do to get paid. Why would I please someone like this as a favor is the question. And why would I get signed up for this expensive lease that was going to make him all this money? Why would I do that? So what is the auto sales person doing? He's the same thing. He's locking me in just to payments for a certain length of time, just like the copier salesperson did, just like the insurance person did. But this is all going to make sense in a moment when you talk about your career. But companies lock you in, as I said earlier, because the car gets old, less fashionable, or something emerges with newer features and you want a new one. And every time the salesperson sells you a car, they make money. Every time you sign a lease for a car, they make money. And cars become like ATMs essentially for auto salespeople. They call you up when something new comes up and they get another commission. They continue locking you in to payments and to obligations that you normally wouldn't have, and to spending money that you could save and do something else with that might be a much better use of your money. And that's what they do. So what does it mean to be locked in? It means that in your life, everything that you're doing and working for, there's all these forces out there that are trying to lock you in. Banks are trying to lock you into mortgages. Cars are trying to lock you into car payments. You're locked into making student loan payments if you went to school. You're locked into making credit card payments. You're locked in. And the longer people lock you in, the more money they make for you. And in all honesty, if you think about your life, you're working for people that have locked you in, people in businesses that have locked you in to pay in money. Banks, insurance companies, schools, if you send your kids to private schools, annual bar fees, if you remember the bar, all these courses to keep your bar current, property taxes on homes, all annual property taxes, all of these things are locking you in. You are locked in by all these people and groups that are making money off you. And you really need to think about this, because this is in many cases why people work. It's why they get stressed about losing jobs. It's why people are locking you in. And I'm not saying necessarily there's anything wrong with this. Certainly you could live in a cabin or something and not have expenses, but you have to understand, why does an insurance salesman make so much money? Why does someone that sells insurance own jets? It doesn't make any sense, does it? Why is he able to lock people in? He does because it works. And I'm not going to get too far into the type of insurance this person said was selling, but I do want to make a few remarks about it. What he was doing is he was selling something called, certain type of insurance for life insurance that is very expensive, but allows you to sell it after making a certain amount of payments or something. It was a very unusual type of insurance. And so he had chosen something where there was no one else doing it and there was a market for it, and he was able to sell it, which is no different than you choosing practice areas, choosing where to work, and that sort of thing. So he had chosen a very lucrative type of insurance and something he was able to make a lot of money off of. So He's able to draw people in and lock them in. There's so many lock-ins around there. When you look, how many lock-ins are there? Marriage is a lock-in. It's something the people, your spouse, you're getting locked in. You may want that, but it's a lock-in. You're locked in and this is not something you do probably as an attorney, but you're locked in to a union. Unions expect you to continually pay dues. And this list goes on, and it just continues. But you have to understand that why are all these people so successful? Why does a insurance salesman make millions of dollars a year? Why does a copier person make $800,000 a year? Why does a 22-year-old car salesman in an auto dealership, how can they make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year? How can all these people, auto dealers, auto salesmen, how can people be so successful when you're maybe not at that level, or maybe you're at that level and this is what you've done? But how do all these people become successful? As a professional and an attorney, your ability to lock people in and get them to commit to you is very important. You need to do this with jobs. You want to get law firms and the people you work for to commit to you and to keep coming back and using you over and over again. You want them to really have a lot of confidence in you. How do you get them to commit? What do you do to lock in your employer and get them to keep you on? What do you do to lock in clients and get them to continue using you? What do you do? Because once you lock someone in, they're committed to you. I committed to an insurance policy for 20 years. I've committed to cars. I've committed to all sorts of things. Copier sales. That's very effective. And that's what people that lock people in, by the way, are the ones that make the most money. Companies like Google will lock you into different things. Dropbox will lock you in. All these people are trying to get subscription fees from you. They're trying to lock you in. Everybody's trying to lock you in because then you work for them. And that's what they want. The more people are committed to you and the harder it is for them to switch, the more they will be committed to keeping you around. Attorneys do this with their clients. The more you learn about your client, the better work you do, the more committed they are. Then they stick with you. The more you help people when they may not be doing well. Legal clients, this is one of the best things they do. You create high switching costs. I'll tell you one quick story, and this story is actually very interesting to me because over the past couple of years, I've heard this from 5 or 6 attorneys. For some reason, I've met a couple this year. I've met a couple previous years. I've met a coaching client that does this. And what they do is they seem to be able to get clients to commit to them because they show up and they're their friend and they help them when things might not be going well for that person professionally or whatever. And then they may help them get into an in-house position. But once they do that, the person feels obligated to continue to use them. They form these relationships. They lock people in because out of a sense of obligation, of feeling that they were helped when others couldn't. So they go out of their way to help them, and the client becomes the client helps them in business. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that maybe in a minute or two, or that idea. But this is very powerful stuff. This is, if you understand how to do this with an employer, you're going to do very well, and clients as well. So how does this work? Several years ago, I had a pretty unusual experience. Someone came to me in response to a job advertisement, and they offered to do, and this is something that you can learn a lot from, they offered to work for me for $10 an hour. They seemed very earnest. They seemed excited about the job. And when I spoke to them, they seemed like the best person for the job at the time. And within 6 months, this particular person they were living with their parents, they were saving money, but they'd learned their job so well, they had become completely indispensable. Meaning they'd come into a job that should have paid a lot more money than they were willing to work, but they realized that our company was growing, that there was opportunity, and they became indispensable, meaning I relied on them for a lot of stuff. They were doing so many things so well that I couldn't believe it. And every time he mastered a task, he became very good at it. He either trained others or to do the task, or he just mastered he trained others to do this former task, or he mastered that one too. And eventually he became involved in nearly every aspect of the business he was working on. He knew a lot of stuff. He was able to really get involved in all these different aspects. And he became someone that because he was doing such a good job, because he could do so many things, because he was so enthusiastic, because he raised people up and wasn't negative, and he did this is a $10 an hour person. It was basically a little over minimum wage at the time. But he became so indispensable and such a star that there was no way I could do without him. And so what happened is the more he did, the more he helped me, just without even me asking. I continued to give him raises. I would maybe within the first month, I raised him to $15 an hour. Then after 2 or 3 months, I was like, wow, this person should make $25 an hour. And this just kept going on because there was so much value that he was providing, so much, doing the job so well, better than anybody, with so much enthusiasm, with the ability to take tasks and run with them and to learn from feedback and then come back after the feedback even stronger. Like just the not talking negatively about the company or me, or trying to help people that weren't doing a good job so the company benefited. All these things this person was doing. And because of that, they were getting raises that they weren't even asking for, because I was like, I can't not afford to give this person a raise. They just made me $100,000 or more by doing something that I never even thought of. And this pattern, by the way, continued for years. And they kept getting raises. When I say they kept getting raises, their pay went up astronomically, meaning at a certain point of time, they were making almost as much as the general counsel of the company. But then this person started missing work. They started doing a poor job on their task, meaning they weren't following through. Things were coming back that were sloppy. And I didn't do anything though. I had numerous discussions with the person about improving their performance, but at the same time, they were indispensable. Because the person had done such a good job for me in the past, I was addicted and very appreciative of the good work they'd done. And I also realized that if I let this person go, because they were working on so many different tasks for so many different people, and it helped me so much, I felt that letting this person go would have created a great deal of chaos. So you can understand that because of this person's previous performance, I was completely locked in. And I'm thinking about it right now, about how much money this person was making. I think that I kept giving them raises, and I think final raise I give them, I think they were making $75 an hour, which again, we're talking about over a decade ago. So this is probably would be at least $100 an hour right now. And not only that, but they were hourly employees are entitled to overtime 1.5 times or something. So sometimes a person was making $150 an hour. Now I want you to understand this. Someone that starts out at a job at $10 an hour over the course of just a few years is suddenly making $150 an hour. What are they doing? What are you doing, by the way, in your firm and where you work to create so much value that people feel they have to give you raises? And the person was having problems. I didn't really know it at the time, but I realized eventually that they needed to return home. They weren't from the United States, and they had issues at home they were very attached to their family and were having a lot of issues. But the point is that this particular person had done such a great job for me in the past that I couldn't possibly let them go. And I would have continued with this person for a long period of time. And this is what you need to understand. If you do an incredible job for your employer and you're enthusiastic and you're learning, you're providing more value than anyone else is. And if you do the same thing with clients, you try to save them money, you look out for them, you encourage them, you do all these things, do the same thing for clients, then you're going to actually be in a very good role and position as well. So you become, with employers, you're locked in by a good performance, and they really will. If you're the best person, they will go out of their way to keep you around. So there's a lot of talk, and I hate to say this, but a lot of people, especially in the recent market, are getting laid off from positions in corporate and positions and different things, or the work's slowing down. But what you need to understand is, like, when you're doing a good job, the law firm or wherever you're working will not lay you off. You'll become indispensable. You'll be someone that they really want to work with and that they want to keep around. They'll give you more and more work where people will say, I cannot afford to have this person leave. I can't, it's impossible because they're doing so many things. And I realized very early on when I was in a law firm that how important this was. And I got in the first law firm I worked in, and I had more cases than any first year or second year associate by far. I had so many that I literally had file cabinets in my office with hardly, I had to like negotiate around them. But at the same time, there were people in the firm, and I was, on track to bill like 3,000 hours a year. But there were other people in the firm that didn't have any hours, that had 800 hours for the year. They weren't able to provide the best results for their partners, and so they weren't getting work. So you have to understand that you have to lock in your employer. You have to become 100% indispensable, because the people that get laid off, the people that don't get work, the people that are having problems in their career, the reason most of the time is because they're not being indispensable. You should be working. If you're working for a client, you should become indispensable. If you're working for partners or other people in your law firm, they are never going to let you go if you're indispensable. And one of the things that happens, by the way, when people lose their jobs in law firms, and I'm sure we'll have some questions about that today, but when people lose their jobs in law firms, it's very difficult for them to get another position if they're unemployed. The reason is it's because they think you'll have, rotten egg syndrome, like you'll be mad and things like that. But one of the other reasons is the law firms that see you're unemployed and are not working there, they're going to conclude that you weren't providing enough value. Like you weren't giving the law firm enough of what it wants, because they know that the best people, regardless of the economy, that are providing the most value, they're not going to get rid of those people. They're going to keep them, because why every partner that they do work for is going to come to their friends and say, I need this person. I need this person. And that's who you need to be. And you're not going to lock an employer in. An employer is not going to commit to you unless you're able to be that person that everyone's dependent on. A client's not going to commit to you unless you have that. So this stuff is very important. This is something that the best attorneys do with their clients. They get a client, they handle one matter, and they say, you should do this other thing, you should do this other thing, you should do this other thing. They paint a roadmap of what the client should do, and they lock them in. And this is something, and then they find work that might not even be necessary, but they convince someone to do it. And they keep billing money to the client month after month, year after year, and the client's locked in. So you need to employ the same tactic with your people you're working for. You need to be indispensable. You need to know more about the work, more about the clients, and do a better job than anyone there. Why was I locked in? The reason I was locked in is because it would be, how would I possibly want to hire someone when this person was doing so much and had done so much before and had such a great future in terms of the work they'd done? They'd learned too much about their job. They had their hand in multiple parts of the business, and they made themselves indispensable, meaning I could not find someone similar to them to help me. This person was very good at what they did. But more importantly, because they were in so many different things, that it would have caused a huge disruption to everything my company does. So I have right now several employees that have been with me, in some cases for over 20 years, that are locked in. They knew too much, that they've been trained too much. They have too much knowledge about things. There are things that they do that only they can do. And I am completely locked in. So if my company slows down, I'm locked in. Everything that happens with them, they're locked in. And this is what you need to do with every employer. This is what you need to think of. You need to figure out, what can I do to be more valuable than anyone there? One example would be, you're very good in a specialty practice area that no one in the firm could do, that you're making money from. Many things you can do, and we'll talk about this, but getting an employer locked in is massively important. I would say it's one of the most important things you can do, because if you get them locked in, you're never going to lose your job. You're always going to be someone that they want to promote. I took someone making $10 an hour and took them to $75 an hour. This is not unusual. I've done this several times before. I've taken people that started off making $50,000, now make well over 100, and got to that very quickly. The idea is that you need to lock yourself in to your employer. Whoever you're working in needs to feel like they need to continue paying you every week or every 2 weeks because they have no choice. You need to get locked in. This is incredibly important because very few people do this. They get into law firms, especially young people, and they're suspicious of partners. They don't want to be taken advantage of. They want to work remotely a certain length of times. They get upset when they're called on the weekends, produce work without passion, without looking deeply into things. They do all these things that make them very easy to let go. The only people, by the way, that keep their jobs when things slow down or when firms change leadership and all these things are the people that have managed to so impress their employers. The employer really has no choice. You need to look at people wherever you work. Who are the people that are locked in? Who are the people that have been there a long time? What are they doing? And most of the time you'll see that not only do they good work, but they've managed to form relationships and be indispensable to certain people that will always protect them. They're locked in. I was talking to this guy not too long ago that had left a very good firm and started his own practice. And by that point, didn't have a ton of stuff, had left a firm, and he'd left it after not making partner. And I said to him, why didn't you make partner? And he said, I was there and I didn't realize until after I'd been there 10 years and not made partner, how important it was to have at least one or two sponsors that are able to that stick up for you and just say how much the firm needs you and how without you, the firm wouldn't be the same and how they need to make you a partner because you have all this potential and how you've done all this great work and how this partner, you're indispensable to them and this partner, you're indispensable to them and you're indispensable to the firm and they need you and they want you. And this is how people, by the way, when they talk about them, they basically, when they're making partners and things and not making partners, they talk about the people that they believe are indispensable. They work all these hours. They do this great work. They have all these, they're doing work for people that need them and couldn't do without them. And this is what you need to think of. You need to be someone that the employer is locked into. If you're in-house, you need to do this. If you're, regardless of what you do, I've seen people, by the way, it's very funny. I see resumes all the time where someone has gone to work for a federal district judge and then they're there 10 years. And I'm like, and maybe they were summer associate at some awesome firm like Morrison and Forrester or something. And so you're like, what the heck? Why is this person there 10 years? And they're there 10 years because the judge basically says, wow, your work is so good. You're so enthusiastic. You're giving me exactly what I want. Would you please stay on another year? And the same thing repeats itself over and over again. And by the way, if you stick with being a law clerk or for a federal district judge, you can actually make a pretty good living, especially if you're in a small town where the judges the salaries go up year after year. But the point is that you need to lock yourself in. This is what people do. The best people, by the way, that are completely indispensable, when it comes time to make them a partner, a lot of times they are in a position where if it doesn't happen, they basically give the message to people that they're going to leave, that they're doing very good work. They will leave. And so law firms will make them partner then. You need to lock yourself in. And this is, by the way, incredibly important. It's important for holding on to jobs. How can you expect to hold on to a job when everyone else, when there's other people that are working harder, when there's people that are more indispensable? A law firm is not your enemy. Partners in the law firm are not your enemy. You're your own enemy. So you need to basically believe that if you give more value than anyone else there, they're going to go very far. And a lot of times, people will actually leave firms and they'll lateral to other places because they realize that they're providing more value already in terms of business or in terms of the quality of work that they're doing than even partners in there. So they want to go someplace where they can provide even more value. So you should think about this. You should think about, if you're moving firms, what you really should be doing is thinking about, can I go someplace where I can actually improve my skills and I can provide more value at a higher level to more important clients or more important people. So you have to are more important partners and I'll rise there. And this is what people want. People want people that become indispensable. They do not let people go that are indispensable. They do not help, but they do not abandon people that help them and did more than others that are indispensable. I had this relative, cousin of mine, and he was working and I'm telling you the story, but it's a long time ago and I may have a few parts of this wrong. But he was working in, I think, Sherman and Sterling in Hong Kong. He hadn't gone to a great law school. He had a very good personality and had started off at a small firm and then had managed to somehow, by networking and meeting the right people, and the way he carried himself and his comportment was very good, conversationalist, but he'd managed to get a job in Sherman and Sterling in Hong Kong. And I think he started off in the New York office and they moved him there. At some point, there was a recession. I don't know when it was. It was maybe 2001 or two, where all the work, and I think he was in capital markets in Hong Kong, just basically went away. And he was doing incredible work. He was working long hours. He was doing very well. But Hong Kong at the time, and still, is a branch office of Sherman Sterling, which is a New York law firm. And so he basically found himself in a position where they actually couldn't keep him on. It didn't matter how good the work he was doing. They were just basically eliminating all of their associates in that practice area because for them, there was not going to be any work for some time. So he lost his job and he moved back to New York. And there was a partner that he'd been indispensable to, meaning he had done incredible work for him. He worked hard. He was dedicated. And this partner had clients. Like he had clients, like big clients, insurance companies, private equity funds, all these big clients that he had in the United States and throughout the world where he did work for. So this partner kept calling him and setting up interviews for him and telling everyone how indispensable he was, how great he was, how he felt obligated to him, and he wanted to help him. And this, by the way, is someone that was like a third or fourth year associate at the time. To make a long story short, this firm or this partner got him a job that I still can't believe how great it is. He's now general counsel there, making, I'm sure, but making very good money. And he has had a great career there, meaning he's probably making, I don't want to speculate too much, but as much as he would have made leading this company as he would have made as partner at Sherman Sterling. And so what's interesting about that, and the other thing why the job is so great is, I'm not going to say where it was because I don't want to give away his identity, but it's on an exotic, like a very cool island that's warm and has great climate and owned by the British, but he's had a kind of a fairy tale career, very cool. And so this is what happens even if you lose your job and someone feels obligated to you because of what a great job you've done, whether it's making partner in a law firm or even losing your job. When people are dependent on you and you do such a good job, they remember you and they want to help you. And you need to develop this sort of reciprocity with employers. They need to feel like you're the best and you'll do a good job for them. And without them, where would you be? And these are the people that law firms keep on, even when they don't think it makes sense financially. These are the people that law firms help and employers help. An example, by the way, the car. So a car entices you with low payments, but what it does is it locks you in. So maybe the payments are lower, but you're spending money over a long period of time. You get a better rate if you lease for 48, so as opposed to 70 or 72 as opposed to 48. The payment goes down, but you're still paying more interest. They know what they're doing. And so insurance does the same thing. An insurance company may give you low payments, but then it locks you in because if you have to get rid of it, they're very quick to tell you that if you ever want to get it again, it's going to be 30% or 50% more or whatever. So you stay with it. The same thing with a copier. When you get a copier, by the way, it's not, and I'm talking about copiers anyway, big copiers that are expensive, you're locked into a monthly lease payment. So you have to pay the lease payment. If you don't pay the lease payment, they turn the copier off. So right off bat, you're locked into a long-term lease payment. And so you have to use it because if you don't, you're wasting that money. So you let people use it and you spend even more money. Lock-in, by the way, is an art form, and law firms and others do it to us all the time. Why do you think associates start out in law firms and then they learn that if they can become a partner, they'll make even more money and they'll be more successful? But in some of these law firms, you may have a class of 100 people that join, and at the end of 8 or 9 years, there might be 1 or 2 of them left. And some years they'll make 1 or 2 of those people partner, other years they won't. So this lock-in is an art form, and it's something that people are doing to you. This is being done to you. It was done to you when you went to law school. You were locked in. Then they try to get you to make donations every year and lock you in. So everybody is trying to lock you in. They're doing it all the time. And you need to learn how to get a job doing this. And you need to, in order to keep practicing, you need to make people locked in. If a partner says, I have a $10 million book of business, what that means is that somehow it's not like they get a big case and they're making a lot of money. It's not that. It's that they're getting clients to continually pay them all this money of $10 million a year. They're locking people in somehow. It's if you want to join a law firm and you have a book of business, say your book of business is $3 million. The law firm isn't going to keep you around. If you want to move firms, they're not going to be impressed if you've had a client that if you got $3 million in business 1 year, they want to see how much you've done over 3 years, how much you've done in 5 years. Law firms want to get people that have managed to lock in clients, meaning you can't just say, oh, I brought in this client and did a little bit of business. Did $3 million in business 1 year. They want to see, can you do this year after year? Are people dependent on you? I remember not too long ago, I was working very hard to help this attorney that was very smart. I think he went to University of Chicago Law School, and he was working in a entertainment firm doing litigation in Beverly Hills. And he just at the point where he should have had business, and he kept saying to me, like, how does a litigator develop business? What is it I need to do? Why can't I get a job? Because why can't I develop business? And because he said, as a litigator, people do cases and it's a one-off thing. And how do you get more? The idea of, in order to do well at this, is you need to figure out how to get clients and have them keep coming back to you over and over again to help with litigation. That's what you do. You get one case, you do an incredible job. The person tells others about you. Maybe you offer a better price. Maybe you offer something that distinguishes you. And this is something that the first law firm I worked at, Quinn Emanuel, they were able to do with clients brilliantly. They would say, we bill in 6-minute increments. So we charge less and we get to the heart of things more. It's all we do. So all these things would lock clients in. Now I don't know how big it is, but I'm sure it's generating hundreds of millions of dollars, if not over $1 billion a year, because they're able to lock clients in. And it's the same with a good value proposition. It's the same thing that you need to do if you're going to be successful as a lawyer. And if you're going to be able to lock your employer in or lock clients in. This stuff is incredibly important. It's the difference between people that become very successful practicing law and with clients and with firms. And it's the opposite of what people that don't do well do. So people that don't do well have no understanding or no interest or no way of understanding this concept of locked in. They don't make themselves indispensable. They start in law firms and they think, oh, I want to make a lot of money and this firm's not paying enough, or this firm doesn't have as good of a reputation, or I don't like this partner because I don't like their personality. And that does good. You have to be able to lock in your employer and make sure that employer is constantly wanting to come back to you, and the people there are, and they're basically locked into paying you your salary, to giving you bonuses, to increasing your salary each year, to supporting you if they want to make a partner. All these things are incredibly important. And I know always there's a lot of people on these webinars that are in-house, and in-house, it's the same thing. And in-house, the best people that become general counsels and so forth, and they're most often very close to the CEO. They know the CEO's management style. They know what that CEO wants and is important to them. They know all these things. And the CEO leaves, goes to another company. They always take that general counsel with them. The general counsel will move with them almost no matter what, because they are very close to that general counsel. They know the way they think. They know what they expect. They know how to defend them. And the cost of finding a new general counsel that does all those things is it's a risk. So they keep those people around that they know are likely to support them. This is what general counsels do. This is what partners do when they move firms. If you're working in a firm and the partner you work for moves, then that partner, you're indispensable to them and you're doing a very good job. The partner is going to do everything they can to bring you along. This is what happens to the best associates and things. They make sure someone that's indispensable moves with them. People protect you. People have your back. And isn't that what you need? Isn't having people protect you more important than being in a position where you're dependent on, think you are dependent on the whims of other people? If you become indispensable, if you become someone that a firm and the people there rely on, someone that a client relies on, then you really don't have to ever worry about employment security. And even if the firm eliminates an entire practice group, the partner, like I showed you with my cousin from Sherman Sterling, will do everything they can do to lock you in. So here's another example, and I'm not necessarily suggesting this, but the person that came to work for me at $10 an hour in their previous job had made more money than that. I'll just say it at that level, meaning they basically were trying to get in the door by offering a lower amount of money. The person had recently come over from another country, didn't feel like they had a lot of opportunity because they were working it was hard to get a job being from another country. I mean, they had married someone from the US. It's a funny story. They had been on a train, met someone, became pen pals, and one of them left their spouse and moved to the United States. Just stuff you can't even believe, but just for love. If you are able to entice an employer to work for you for free or for a very reduced rate, this is something that people do in the summers. It's something that when they're law students, but you can offer to work for someone for a reduced rate if you're having a difficult time getting a job, or if it's an employer that you really want to work at, you can do that. And then you can become indispensable. I had there was someone I was working with a couple of years ago, and he'd gone to University of Virginia Law School. And then after 1 year of working for a top law firm in Washington, DC, he decided to go in-house or to some lobbying organization. I don't remember what it was, but he basically left. And then this organization stopped working. I don't know what happened, but there was no job there anymore. So he couldn't get a job. So he took a job working as a staff attorney in a law firm based in Ohio that was a national law firm, but not that big, and got there and decided they weren't paying him enough. So he wasn't going to work hard. He didn't think that they should be paying that much money or paying him such little money. So he was angry. So he, instead of concentrating on doing a good job with his job and trying to do the best as a staff attorney so he could become an associate and overcome this issue of having left a very good law firm for going in-house so early in his career, he just became angry, didn't do good work, complained about the money, said this should never happen to someone that goes to a top law school like University of Virginia. How could I possibly be in this position? So that's a mistake. So think about it. At the time, the firm he was working at was paying probably a little over, I don't know, not that even that much. He was making as a staff attorney like $60,000 or $70,000, and just complaining and not feeling like he'd been slighted and feeling like unless they were going to pay him more money, he wasn't going to contribute more. He didn't want to go to firm functions because he would meet associates and he would have to socialize them as a staff attorney, not as a realtor. So his mistake, by the way, was very simple. Instead of undermining and not working hard and feeling angry and asking for raises and lowering the morale of everyone, he just didn't work hard and didn't become someone that was indispensable to the law firm. And because he wasn't indispensable to partners and other people, instead of elevating him to an associate, which is what he probably could have done if he'd worked hard, they ended up letting him go. And I see his resume. I see the resume. He keeps resubmitting it to me every several months. And he's got a series of jobs that haven't been good, that, where he's staying in them for short periods of time and leaving, and never became indispensable to anyone, never became indispensable to clients, never became indispensable to firms, never became indispensable for in-house people, because all he was thinking about is himself. And he thought that having a degree from University of Virginia Law School entitled him to to massive success, to being someone that should be paid a lot, regardless of if they were indispensable. So I'm telling you, man, like this stuff is incredibly important because very few people realize the importance of locking an employer in by being indispensable. This is incredibly important stuff. And if you do this, it's going to change your life and it's going to change your career. And you need to understand, you need to lock in employers, you need to lock in clients, you need to lock everyone in. And we're almost done with this. I know it's been a long webinar, but I think this is very important. So when people get laid off or not hired, they've done something that's prevented them from effectively locking in the law firm. The law firm doesn't feel like they're offering enough skills. The law firm doesn't feel like they're offering enough value. The law firm doesn't feel like you're going to raise the spirits of people. You're going to be grateful for the job. There's nothing about you that makes you stick out as someone that they really want to keep around. One of the things that's so interesting too, by the way, if you're at a firm that you don't think is that great and you get an interview at a better firm and excited, you should go in there and be like, this is amazing. This is my dream. I will work as hard as I can to show my appreciation. I'm going to do the task I need. I'm going to do them as well as I can. People that do that always get jobs. They get them from such a good firm or another. And people sometimes in law firms, I saw one this morning, I'm like, how in the world did this person with this law school and grades, why are they at one of the most prestigious AmLaw and the 100 law firms? And it's the same thing. They manage to get people locked in at interviews, and then they get in, the people keep them around. So you need to learn from law firms and lock them in. And you need to understand and watch how people do things in sales. Watch how the best partners operate in their relationships. Watch how partners that may not have business have gotten elevated to be a partnership partner. And they all do it, by the way, being indispensable and getting people behind them. This is what they all do. And then they do it with clients. This is the game. So this is the game, by the way, of succeeding in a law firm. It's the game of succeeding as a partner. It's a game of succeeding as a general counsel. You have to provide people more value and get them more dependent on you than anyone else. And if you don't do that, they're going to continually bounce around from job to job, and you're going to wonder what happened. I have this great degree or this great experience, but you haven't managed to become indispensable to people. Attorneys that are indispensable, by the way, this is an interesting thing. I see this all the time. So someone is a senior associate and they may not have any business, but they go into a law firm and they say, I don't necessarily have any business, but I do work for these 3 or 4 clients. They no longer have a relationship with a partner that brought them in. I'm doing pretty much all their work and I've done a very good job with them. And they've asked me that they've even asked me if I could come to work for them at some point in my career. Then they say, hey, I have all this potential business. If you hire me as an associate laterally, I will do my best to generate this much business in a year for my existing clients. I'm pretty sure that they'll follow me. So you can become indispensable to the clients of your law firm. You have all these ways of being indispensable, and you figure out, how do you become indispensable? How do you lock people in? Because if you've been doing work for a client, for example, for 5 years, and you know everything about them, and you know you've done really good work and you've gotten good results, of course you're going to be locked in. You know, if insurance agents, copier salesmen, auto salespeople, and others can live these lives, meaning they can make incredible amounts of money with no education, with just their ability to lock people in, and they can have all of this success and live lives of their dreams. This is something you can do. And I would venture to say that these people, you may be smarter than them from an intellectual standpoint, better able to understand different types of ideas and get good grades. But you can't just rely on that. You have to rely on the message that they're sending, which is you can only live the life of your dreams if you're able to lock people in. You have to be able to lock employers in. You have to be able to lock clients in. And you only do that, by the way, with incredible performance and doing a good job. Think about this. I want to just bring up this example again. Some guy from Italy shows up in my office for a job and just came over to the United States, asked if he says he's willing to work for this low rate, and he understands it's very difficult to get a job in the United States and he will show me what he can do. And literally, when he went in to interview with me, was his first or second day in the United States where he had never been. And he'd gotten married and he might have been in the United States once or twice, but he was moving and taking that job, and within a very short period of time, I don't know if it was 1 or 2 years, increasing his hourly rate by 7 times plus. And so this is what happens to people that are indispensable. People want to help them. And so you're only going to advance in your career if you can get your employer to commit to you and wanting to keep coming back to you again and again. And this is something that the most successful companies do. They get people signed up for subscriptions. People rely on lawyers to do things. They commit. So they commit to employees. And so you can only do this if you lock people in and you make yourself indispensable. This is incredibly important. It's something that people fail to do all the time. And if you're having problems in your legal career, or you're not advancing, or you're feeling that you're being marginalized, or that the law firm is not giving you opportunities, that you're failing at jobs and losing your jobs and feeling like you got laid off, if you're having problems with partners and they're letting you go because of personality conflicts and things, all you're doing wrong 99% of the time is you're not indispensable. You're not, they know that they can do better with someone with a better attitude, or someone that works harder, that's more careful and doesn't make typos and things. They know they can do better. And if they go out and they hire a recruiter, they advertise, they know they can do better. So why wouldn't they let you go if you're a problem? Why wouldn't they try to replace you? Because they know that someone out there, a lot of people that they can hire are going to be better. So why wouldn't they do that? People a lot of times in big New York firms feel a lot of insecurity. And this is actually very good. Like they're like just snapping their heels and doing very well, because a market like New York, for example, is very competitive. There's millions of people living in New York. There's thousands of attorneys probably in your practice area. So if you're not great, then the law firm analyze big firms knows that they can replace you with someone better. So you have to you have to get employers to rely on you. You have to do better work than others. You have to become someone that people go to first. And you have to make people think that there's no way in hell that they can do better if they go out in the open market and hire someone new. And if you're not that person, that's exactly what's going to happen to you. You have to get people to commit to you by doing the best work you possibly can, by being indispensable and locking them in. When you lock them in, they're committing to pay you $20,000, $30,000 a month every month, and it won't stop, and it'll keep going up because they're dependent on you. And if you try to leave, they will try to keep you around. If they don't make you partner, they will be nervous. All these sorts of things happen. Clients with jobs, you need to get everyone locked in to you. And that's where you succeed. You succeed like that when you find the mate of your dreams and you get married, and that's a lock-in. What's the point of that? The whole point of marriage is to lock someone into a commitment and have them always with you. This is what life is about. It's about getting people locked in and having that work. So I'm going to just take a quick break just for just a minute or two. And what I'd like to do, what I'd suggest you do is, what's the most helpful thing on these webinars? This is a weird day because some people are on vacation, others aren't. But what is the most helpful thing many times is just to ask any questions that you have about your career, about what's going on, about how you can improve, about why something happened to me, about where the opportunities are, about practice area. Whatever questions you have, I'm happy and look forward to answering them. But you should ask questions. I think if you have questions, they can be very helpful. Why do I answer these questions? Because I've been doing this for 25 plus years, and I only do permanent law firm placements. And it's something that I've been working on probably 50 plus hours a week for 25 years. So I do have some understanding of what makes people succeed and what doesn't. And when people succeed, I succeed. So any questions you have, I'm happy to answer. And then, so just feel free to ask as many questions you have. I will stay as long as you have questions. And then the only other thing that it's important to remember is sometimes people are afraid of asking questions because they think that someone's going to use their name or whatever. So if you're logged into Zoom, I will cut and paste make sure your name doesn't show up. And so all the questions and answers are confidential. So just ask as many questions as you have. And I will be back in just a minute or two. Thanks. All right, some questions. And again, anyone that has questions, it's interesting to listen to other people's questions, but if you have any questions, I really would recommend asking as many as you have. It's just very helpful because a lot of times, even though you don't think your question sounds important, it will touch a nerve with some people. I work in a highly competitive market where standing out is crucial. How can the lock-in strategy help me to differentiate myself from other attorneys and build a unique brand? Okay, so that's a great question. One thing I've seen a lot of times is the best attorneys and the ones that tend to become indispensable to firms are people that are able to not just work in a certain practice area, but to actually contribute to the practice area in ways that make you different. So what does that mean? It means writing articles and giving presentations about legal issues and our legal practice areas and about your specialty. So this is something everyone should do. If a law firm, I saw someone not too long ago that was a partner at a very big firm. I think it was Kirkland and Ellis, but they were an equity partner and had never had, from what I could tell, any special amount of business or anything. But they had written all these law review and other articles about a very specific practice area that the law firm needed. And these things, when you're showing that you're an expert in something, you're giving a lot of credence to the firm in terms of articles, presentations. I even saw recently one associate that was in the real estate industry or real estate do a podcast. And all of these things can help you. The other thing that can help you is not just doing the work for your clients, but making sure that you become indispensable clients. If you do such good work for the clients and the clients are connected to you and you figure out how to do that, then you're going to be in a position where then you're going to actually be able to get a lot of work. But not only that, where the client would be furious if they were to let you go because of the strength of your connection. And this happens to a lot of people. The best attorneys, the clients are very enthusiastic about them and they know it. So all these things can help you. The lock-on strategy also help you if you do the best work for people you're working for. More enthusiastic, look into things more deeply, deliver in a way that you look nicer. One thing and provide better service. So one of the things I would say that's also important to understand, and this is very crucial, this is something that a lot of lawyers don't understand, and especially associates. So think about when you go into the best stores, if you go into a really good French restaurant, or you go into a very expensive store, you order something from a certain business, and what differentiates people and businesses is customer service. And I'm not saying is customer service and businesses, is customer services. So customer service. So if you provide really good customer service to the partners you're working for and people in the clients you're working for, then why would they want to use someone else? Why? This is what they want. Many people think, oh, I'm in this firm, they're not paying me enough, or, oh, they're giving me too much work. But if you provide good customer service, you're going to become indispensable. And you need to look up when anytime you're in any employer, you should respect. And if you're a junior associate, you should respect the mid-level associates that they're there. And then if you're a mid-level associate, you should be respecting the senior associates. And if you're a junior associate, you should be revering the partners and people you're working for and the senior associates, because if you make people feel important, they're going to like you and they're going to want to keep you around. If you make people feel unimportant, then they're not going to want that. So you need to make people feel important, and it's incredibly important. And so if you do that, then people are going to want to help you. And so that doesn't mean necessarily kissing ass and that sort of thing, but it does mean that you give them the best customer service you possibly can. And attorneys, by the way, that don't give good customer service, that are not enthusiastic, that have bad attitudes, that talk negatively about the firm with each other and act like they're all put out, are the ones that don't necessarily advance. And so that's what you really need to do if you're going to be successful. You need to figure out how you can do all these things. And so all this stuff will help you stand out. Who in your firm is writing an article per month or about their practice area? Who in your firm is going out and trying to give presentations or going to going to seminars and then sending out memos to partners about what you learned? And who's doing these things? Very few people. Who's going out and spending time getting business? It was interesting. I was, a month ago or something, I was talking to this partner that's got this huge book of business. I know it's 30, 40 million. And his take home pay is guaranteed. I think it's over $7 million a year. So this is the kind of money you can make. I mean, $7 million a year is a pretty good paycheck. So I talked to him and he said, well, when I was in a firm, I would bill 2,500 hours a year to the clients. And then I would go out and spend $2,500 or 2,500 hours a year meeting with potential clients and going out and doing that. So think about this, 5,000 hours a year. It's obviously a lot of time, but that definitely made the person stand out massively. And he did this all when he was initially at a mid-sized regional California firm. And then he became so indispensable that they weren't paying him enough and all this sort of stuff. So he ended up going to one of the largest and most competitive law firms in the world. This is what happens when you get business. You have to get business. This is what happens when you do a good job for others. It helps, and it's what you need to do if you're going to succeed. Okay, really new legal profession, still building my client base. How can the lock-in strategy be applied by attorneys in the early stages of their careers who are do not have an extensive network of reputation yet? Okay, so I don't know from this question if you're someone with a client, with those things with a client, or you have clients, or you're someone that solo practitioner, or if you're in a law firm trying to lock people in. So I'll cover the law firm first, and then the next thing I'll talk about is what you could do as a solo practitioner and how do you lock people in with that. Okay, so if you're in a law firm, you start out as an associate or whatever, and you lock firms in by doing the best work possible with the best customer service. So the partners are your clients, partners, and then by working hardest and providing far more value than they are likely to get without you. That's it. So it's a good system. It's more competitive at some of the biggest firms, but that's what you do as an associate, is you do that. And then hopefully you get business too at some point when you're ready. But this is what they do. So this is what you need to do if you want to succeed as an associate, and then you become a partner. So you just really have to do that. Now, I will say something, that if you're a junior associate or something, it's not really time to start getting business. You do not have enough credibility. You don't know your practice area enough. And frankly, when you're associate, they want you to bill hours. That's what's important to them. But you don't expect in the early stages of your career. When you get in the later stage of your career, you can work on business. But that's that. Now, if you're solo practitioner, this is actually fairly important. And I'll talk a little bit about this, but anyone who's an attorney in a law firm or an attorney can become a solo practitioner. And you can actually do very well as a solo practitioner if you know what you're doing, and you can build a law firm as a solo practitioner. And this particular option is very attractive to a lot of people that come out of law school. It's also attractive many times to lawyers that are in big firms or mid-sized firms and don't necessarily have enthusiasm about working for others and want to build their own thing, which I understand. I can see why someone want to do that. So how do you do this as a practitioner? You pick a practice area where you are likely to lock in clients in some manner. What does that mean? You can lock people in different ways. One of the most interesting examples is trust and estates law. I was looking at some office space in Malibu not too long ago, maybe back in May or something. And the woman that was showing me the office space said, this guy he's only 5 years out of law school, and he opened this trust and estates law firm where he I don't know, he does something when people die and gets a, percentage of their estates for managing and with no particular training and trust in the state's law. He just came and learned about it and took seminars and things. And he's making this type of money that she said he's doing really well. He just bought a $7 million house or something. So this is 5 years out of law school, figuring out a practice area where he could make a lot of money as a solo practitioner. How did he develop the client base? I don't know. Maybe he sent letters to everyone in Malibu. I have no idea, but he did it and is very successful. I've met immigration lawyers that have done this and become very successful. Now, immigration doesn't necessarily lead to lock-in, but it does. The immigration lawyer will do something for one person and then with immigration, and then they may do their whole family. So that whole family, that's a lock-in. So that sort of thing. And then another big one is you've got personal injury lawyers. So personal injury lawyers, once you sign up and they file a complaint, you're locked in and you're under their control. So personal injury lawyers do that. You have all sorts of practice areas. I see real estate lawyers that become close with a few developers and they're solo practitioners. And so all these different things you can do. And sometimes you see the same thing with corporate, not as much, but corporate. All of these practice areas a solo practitioner can do. I've seen immigration lawyers. I know one that went to Southwestern Law School, could not get a job, doesn't have any not good grades and things, and started this huge immigration firm without anybody teaching her anything to do. That was bringing in like $20 million a year in revenue. And so you can, and it wasn't just her, she had a bunch of paralegals, but no other attorney she was working with. So all these things you can do. And if you understand how to lock clients in different ways, then you can be very successful. But you only do that, by the way, when you are doing the best work possible and let's see. Okay, let me just see. Okay, so this is a question someone liked my presentation, which is actually fun. I like these questions. I'm not fun, but it makes me think. Okay, I disagree with the premise of your presentation. I was fired from a firm due to a personality conflict, despite working incredibly hard and carrying a lot of projects on my back. They've been unable to fill the position. I've seen that the cases I worked on are now spiraling out of control. Some partners are stupid and corrupt and place their egos over the well-being of their office. Okay, that's probably true. And I don't think people do have egos and they place them over the well-being of the office. So what I would like to say to you and to everyone on this call is think of staying in an expensive hotel, Four Seasons or something, whatever, Four Seasons, etc. How do they treat you? What do you expect? And what would you do? What would you do if they were arrogant, not arrogant, but they had a personality conflict? If they upset you, or had a personality conflict, how would you feel? Would you go back to that hotel? Would you call the management? Would you be angry? Would you threaten not to stay there anymore? And that's what happens. So if you do this and you act like this, if you're staying someplace and they act like that towards you, you would do the same thing. The problem with personality conflicts is this is one of the most common reasons that people lose their jobs in firms. It's because of these personality conflicts. It's because they're unable to elevate. They are angry. They think people are stupid or corrupt and have bad egos. And this continually is something that happens. I'll tell you this kind of funny story, because I was thinking about the Four Seasons. And this story is a long time ago. I don't know, it's probably 17, 18 years ago, but maybe, well, anyway, it doesn't matter. But I was with my wife and we had gone to the Four Seasons for New Year's. And so we got there a couple of days, and Four Seasons in Santa Barbara, which has been closed for years because of some employee dispute. But we went to the Four Seasons in Santa Barbara, and we had this nice room. We were staying there, and one of my wife's friends from when she was in graduate school, and he was a man, came up, and we were all going to go out to dinner New Year's Eve. But in addition, he came up and he was going to also bring his girlfriend. And so he came up and we all went out to the night before New Year's Eve. My wife and I went out with him and he was acting completely insane, just very bad behavior. It's funny. I don't even want to talk about it, but he threw a cone into a car and broke its window. He got in an argument where he was calling people names and just acting completely crazy. And he was very drunk. And he did some other stuff that was pretty funny. Why am I telling you this? So we finally got back to the hotel and we're walking to our room and there was one of these bar carts where has all these hundreds of little bottles of liquor and everything. And he was walking down the hall and he was behind me and he dumped over this bar cart and hundreds of little bottles came flying down. A lot of them broke. And then as I was walking, I realized that there was an employee, like a manager type employee, also walking down the hall, maybe because they saw him show up so drunk. And they saw this and I thought that he was going to go to prison but he didn't. And they saw this and he said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And the person said, "Don't worry about it. It's my pleasure to clean it up," or something, which I couldn't believe. I don't know how something like that would even happen, but at some of these really good hotels and businesses, like their objective is not to upset you, to avoid conflict, to all these sorts of things. I thought that particular example was really extreme. I've never seen anything like that with someone letting someone out of problems. This Four Seasons, these Ritz-Carltons and stuff, their objective is to make you as happy as possible. I remember I was just a while ago, I was in the Nobu Hotel in, I don't know what part of Mexico, but it was some part of Mexico. I think it might've been in Cabo. I don't remember, but I was staying there and my fiance went out to this restaurant and got sick. And we told them that we thought she got sick from a restaurant. And they showed up the hotel with all of these soups and these very special things to help her. And that's what they do. The best hotels and things, their objective is to make you feel as good as possible. They would call and see how she's doing and all this sort of things. So this is something that I've noticed in terms of the customer service that people provide. So the point is that with this Four Seasons example, with this Ritz-Carlton example, with this actually the Noble Hotel example, all of these people are trying to make sure that they leave a positive taste in your mouth. They leave you with a positive taste and impression. They avoid conflict where they can. The Four Seasons, if that was my hotel, I would have said, "This is freaking outrageous. I can't believe this. I'm calling the police. We're going to bill you for all this liquor and the amount of liquor we lost. We're going to bill you for cleaning the carpets and the time of our employees." And this is what they could have done. But instead, they avoided conflict and just made the whole thing something to have to worry about. And because of that, I was just so impressed with the place. I kept going back there and would find reasons to go there. I was like, these people are so nice. And so this is what you need to do. And the reason I'm spending so much time on this is that if you're going to keep a job, if you're going to succeed, you have to figure out how you can provide the absolute best customer service to your employer, how you can get them to like you, how you can avoid conflict. Meaning, avoiding conflict means you could get upset about a lot of things. You could be angry with a lot of things that they do. You could talk negatively about them, but you just move forward keep providing good customer service without any trace of anger. And that's what people want. And that's who the people come back to. Now, this stuff with the Four Seasons, I believe they were probably trained to do that. And that was something that may be a little bit extreme, but people want you to feel the best customer service. People want you to feel as good as you possibly can about their brands, and about them. So you need to put this into the way you deal with your clients, and the way you deal with the law firm clients, and the way you deal with partners and other people that you're working above you. Because if you don't, they're not going to like it. They will realize when they've acted inappropriately and you've looked the other way. They will come and apologize to you sometimes. They will, and that's it. So this is really was what I would recommend in terms of that. In your experience, how does the locked-in concept differ for attorneys working in private law firms versus those employed by legal employment and legal departments and corporations? Are there unique considerations for each, and how can attorneys strategically approach career decisions in these contrasting environments? Okay. So just let's talk about in-house first. I do not specialize in doing in-house placements because it's frankly an entire different thing than doing law firm placements. So let me talk about in-house jobs real quickly and how that works. So you need to, if you're the only, if it's just you, you need to lock in the company, and then preferably the CEO or founders, or if you're working for another attorney, you need to lock them and company. So that's all. So how do you lock in the company? You become indispensable to the company founders. You help them avoid mistakes and make money. You do all sorts of things to make the employer relying on you and the founder. You basically cast your lot for them and do everything you can to help them and make them look good and make them feel better about you than anybody else that's ever done the job by telling them what they need to hear, but also providing solutions. So what does that mean? So sometimes you may say, oh, if you do this transaction or you do this, you may be breaking this rule, blah, blah, blah. And if you do it, I can't possibly work here any longer. And that's how people get fired from in-house jobs, is they're unwilling to play the game. So many times in an in-house job, your job is to basically tell the people the risk and then tell them what you would recommend to help them get around it. If they don't follow it, it's not your responsibility to get upset. You just keep supporting them and telling them the best solutions and thinking about things in that way. If you're working for another attorney, you do need to do the same thing with them. If you're working for a general counsel in one company, the odds are they'll move. So if you make them look good and you help them, you provide them good customer service, then you're going to do very well as well. So that's how to think about in-house jobs. Private law firms, I think I talked about this already, but the people you work for, you need to provide the best customer service possible. That's that service possible and lock them. Again, a lot of people don't think of their jobs in law firms or working in-house so much as providing good customer service. Customer service means you answer the phone, you get back to people quickly, you do work better than others and maybe even faster than others. You make people dependent on you because you do much better work than other people can do. And all these things are just what you need to do in order to succeed. If you don't do these things, then someone else will be hired. And just keep in mind that regardless of what job you have, almost everyone is replaceable. So are there people that are going to have better attitudes? Are there people that are going to work harder? Are there people that understand their boss's needs and their company's needs better than you? So that's really what it's all about. And if you're able to do those things, then you're going to be far more successful than people that don't. So that's the game. And that's what makes people rise. And not doing that wasn't doing it. This particular webinar and these questions are really at the heart of what you need to do to succeed. You cannot be angry with your employer for not paying you enough. You cannot be angry with the people that you work for and have personality conflicts with them. If you do have personality conflicts, you need to figure out how to fix it and fix it fast. If you're working wherever you're working, your job is not to have personality conflicts. And think back to the Four Seasons example that I gave you. They're avoiding conflicts at all costs. They don't want a conflict. They're doing whatever they can to make you happy. And the same thing with employers. So if you do that with employers, you're going to be much better off and do much better. And I think you're going to be much better in your life and your career. Okay. So this is another question here. And this is actually a very good question. It's a follow-up to the question that I just answered. And I will answer that now since the person's. So in your experience, sorry. Okay. Thanks to answer my question, but disagree. And I appreciate the perception. I do think you make a valid point. I think I meant to ask, how can one make themselves invaluable from an interpersonal perspective, as in being seen as an integral part of the social fabric of the office? Okay, that's a good question, because people often worry about being very social in different types of positions that they can have. So in law firms, there's typically, and I've written articles about this, there's grinders, minders. This is the direction that most people go in their careers, and there's a value to each of them. And I'll explain a little bit about that to you. Grinders are people that essentially are soldiers and do whatever is asked better than others. better than others. All that means is they are willing to, they do work, they work as hard as they can, they follow orders, and they don't question things. And then you have finders, which are even more valuable, which are people that generate business, and basically give everyone stuff to work on. And then you have what are called minders. And minders, I'm sure you have them in your firm or wherever you work. Minders are people attorneys that do things like associate mentors. They will do summer associate trips and things with summer associates and be in charge of those programs. They will be on different bureaucratic roles in the firm. They typically, their skill is related to their ability to make sure things are working in the firm. And typically these are partners or people that don't have a lot of business, but they have that to offer in terms of being that. So let's talk about your position. So right now, your position, this makes you very indispensable. But this is not indispensable. So why is it not indispensable? Every year, law firms hire people out of law school, and also law firms hire laterally and all that sort of thing. So you're pretty much, if you're a young associate and you're not getting along with people, like why would they keep you around? It's just, if you're a partner, you want people that make you feel good about yourself. You want people that aren't going to undermine you. You want people that are going to respect you. You want people that want to learn from you and be there in the long term, that they can feel like they're supporting. These are all things you would want too if you're a partner. So think about yourself. So if you were hiring someone to mow your lawn and you had a personality conflict with that person, you wouldn't like that. If you were hiring someone to work in your house and take care of your kids and you had a personality conflict, you wouldn't like that. Now, there's nothing wrong with with having negative opinions about that person, but if you think it, you're going to show it. And if you do that, you're not going to succeed. So you have to really think about things from the standpoint of what kind of service am I providing? Am I being like the Four Seasons where I'm throwing over someone throws over a bar cart and hundreds of dollars in liquor is destroyed? Am I going to be like the Four Seasons, or am I going to be like, what am I going to do and how am I going to do it? So you have to think about the perspective of what a grinder does as someone that provides good customer service to people. And this is really the name of the game. You make people feel good and others don't. I'm sure that you and everybody has this experience. There are certain people that you meet and you can tell, like by their attitudes or the way they work or whatever, that you don't like them. They leave you with a bad feeling. Sometimes you don't even know why. Why is this person leaving me with a bad feeling? I would submit to you that there's things that you pick up, maybe even subconsciously, or maybe the person's sending out some kind of negative energy, but there's things that you will pick up that you will be uncomfortable around them. And so you need to be someone sending out, how to say, positive vibes and being liked. And that's what you need to be doing. So you need to think positively about the people that you're taught. You need to think positively about people. You need to be someone that looks like that they would want to have around. And you don't necessarily need to have a personality that's anything special. Law firms have nerds. They have outgoing people. They have this and that. And you can be whatever you want. You could be a grinder, a finder, a combination of them, but some way to make yourself indispensable and liked. And that's really what you need to do. And you need to provide more value to the people you're working with than they can find on their own. You need to make people comfortable with you, because if they're not comfortable, then they'll hire someone that isn't. Now, I want to say one thing. This is just a warning for everybody on this call and in the personal stuff. And I think this is something that will help you quite a bit. And that's about interpersonal relationships with partners and et cetera. What are you doing with, and how? So I'll tell you two quick stories about interpersonal relationships gone bad and how you need to set boundaries and so forth. So there was this woman that I know and used to know better, and she was working for this one partner in kind of a discrete practice area in a big law firm in Palo Alto. And she was hired to work for her out of law school. And immediately after starting working there, this partner started talking to her about her dating life, about creating profiles on dating sites, about dates that had gone bad, and all this sort of stuff. And essentially was using her as a sounding board and treating her like a friend. And this partner, she would do this, but the partner would give her a lot of work. And I think this partner was, for whatever reason, I don't want to get too far into this and go down a rabbit hole, but was having a very difficult time getting intimate with men and in that position, jealous of women that could. Had never been married. And so one weekend, this associate, it was a junior associate, had met some man somewhere but only met him briefly and invited him out to see her and to visit her. And they had sex all weekend. And then she told the partner about this, and the partner immediately was upset. She thought it was a fun story because they both talked about their dating life, and the partner didn't like it. And I don't know what she didn't like about it. She didn't like that. I don't know, but maybe just the people do this kind of thing. So she stopped giving her work and eventually fired her. So a good relationship immediately went to bad. And so you have to understand also that you cannot form relationships with people and people that are working with you that are too close. If you do that, then they will use everything negative about you against you. So you do not go to work and talk about problems with your spouse. You do not go to work and talk about overcoming addictions. You don't have to go to work and talk about health problems, and you may have to, but you don't want to go to work and talk about bad things you've done in the past, or you just don't do that, because anything you say will be used against you and you'll be judged by it. And I hate to say it. I remember I've had times when I've interviewed someone or had someone interview them, and they've gone out at lunch and in the middle of the day and had 3 drinks. And no, that's not cool. I'm not going to hire them. So people will judge you based on things. So your interpersonal relationships, you cannot, by the way, with associates and other people on the firm, if you start talking to people about your personal life and things you've struggled with, everybody will find out. Partners will find out. Everyone will find out. I had this very funny experience. I'm not going to get too far into it, but I was in this bar and I started talking to Judd Nelson, and it was an 80s actor or something. And he said something really rude to me. I don't remember what it was, but get the hell away from me or something. I was just talking to him. I wasn't a Judd Nelson fan or anything. And I left this bar. Then I came back and told my friend that I was going to set him straight or whatever, went in there. And it doesn't matter what happened. But all of a sudden on Monday or whatever, the next day, all these partners in my firm found out about it. Now, they thought it was funny. This is the firm I was at the time, but I was terrified about that. And so being too close to people is very dangerous. And you need to be very careful about interpersonal relationships. Your relationships, if you're just get along with people, you do work with you don't go into too much detail about your personal life. If someone asks you, you can talk about their marriage, have 2 kids and stuff and positive things, but you cannot, by any stretch of the imagination, go down some rabbit hole. Sometimes people tell people they're in recovery or all these different things and from drugs or alcohol, and then they become defined on that. There's nothing wrong with those things, but you just have to be very careful. Okay, this is a good question, and thank you for answering this. And by the way, these are great questions. I'm very impressed with these great questions. If you have any follow-up, what happened here? If you have questions that you're afraid to ask or something, they're probably good questions, so you should ask. Late 50s who worked very hard for a CEO who ended up having an extramarital affair with an employee and was financially reckless with corporate funds, eventually resulting in the company going bankrupt. I refused to cover up these issues for him and quit. We haven't spoken since. I've struggled to explain the situation and remain employed. How can I apply your lock-in strategy to get another job and not worry this will happen to me again? Yeah, so that's a great point. What happens to a lot of people is they get to work for companies and they figure out that the company's doing something wrong or making legal mistakes. This is, by the way, very common. It's something I see happen all the time. And especially attorneys fresh out of law firms are astonished that this sort of behavior is going on. So your question is, how can you fix this? And what do you explain to people when you're going to new firms. And I think that if it was me, I would just say the company went bankrupt. And there's no bankrupt due to embezzlement by my GC, right? Or by men or whatever, embezzlement or recklessness by the CEO. It's easier to quit a job in a company for those sorts of reasons. And it's much harder to quit. When you quit a law firm, you have to be very careful because the perception is the law firm's probably not really doing anything wrong. So if you're able to explain that, I think that's probably okay. So how do you use this lock-in strategy? The most common thing that the GCs often will approach companies in the same industry, and tell them about how they made money or whatever, made money for previous company, and would love to speak to them and that sort of, and this related. And this process, by the way, works. And then when you do that, then they believe that you can save them a lot of money. You can save them money on outside counsel and all sorts of things because you have some rare skill that will enable them that will save them money. There's one other thing I wanted to tell you that I think personally is pretty cool. And this actually works. And especially for people that are in general counsel or in-house counsel roles. So what happens to most companies when they hire in-house counsel, and I'm talking about smaller companies like you may have worked at, where you're working for people. So the way to lock in an employer, and I think is very important. So what an employer like an in-house company is looking for when they hire someone is they're actually not, sometimes they're looking for people that have the ability to form outside relationships and do all of these things. But in general, they're looking for people that can form relationships, that have relationships at some points, but they're also looking for people to actually do the work. So I'll just tell you a quick question. This is just an example of something that I've seen over and over again. Recently, I was at a meeting with a bunch of business owners that were talking about their businesses, and this one guy said, I hired this attorney to do franchising work for us. He had a franchise company, and I hired her from the law firm that I was using to do all the franchising work. And I thought that she would come over with her skills and would save us hundreds of thousands of dollars by doing the legal work herself. And what generally happens to companies when they hire in-house counsel, they think that they'll be able to do the same thing and save money. But then the in-house counsels start referring work out. And because they don't do the work, and when they say, there's too much liability, or I need outside assistance and all that sort of thing. And then the companies end up spending just as much money. So this franchising guy said, I hired this in-house counsel and she found even more work to be done, the work that she couldn't do. So suddenly I was paying her all this money, and I was also paying the law firm doing the work even more money. And so I didn't save money. So what I would always try to say, what you have to understand your value proposition is to any law firm or to any company that you're trying to work with, is that you can make the money and save the money. So if you're a GC and say, I believe in doing the work and not referring the work out, you're going to get a ton of business and people using you. I did want to tell you a quick story, and it was about, I don't typically work on in-house placements because it's just a different animal. I prefer to be an expert in law firm placements because every day I learn something about that. And why would I'm locked into it because I've been doing it forever. But most companies, when they hire in-house counsel, what they do is let me see, wait a second here. So I'm just having a little mind thing here. So most companies, this was actually a placement that I made in a toy company based in Louisiana. And so this toy company was paying all of these outside law firms to fight patent infringement cases they were importing all these things from China and then getting sued for patent or something, either trademarks. I don't remember exactly what it was. Things that were being done wrong, the people that they were doing wrong with this intellectual property related to these toys. And so they've been doing things with all these law firms, and they asked me to do a search. And so I went and I got partners from big law firms in Los Angeles and One partner I got he was at a big firm. I was a part of Sullivan and Cromwell or something. I couldn't believe it. I was interested to do work and manage all these patent cases. That's what they want. And they don't want someone to refer things to outside counsel. Out of the 5 people or whatever that I presented to the firm, each of them, with the exception of one guy who was unemployed, basically said, I think this is complex. You're going to need people outside counsel to do the work. I know a lot of people, including people in my own firm. And so all these people were doing was basically saying that they wanted others to do the work for them. And that was it. And they said I would manage it and everything. But and then I found one guy, he was in Chicago and unemployed and had been a service partner at a firm that basically said, I will do all this work. I'm job and pay a lot, $200,000 a year. I'm willing to do all this. And if I need help, we can hire in-house attorneys and save you a lot of money. That's the person that got the job, the person who was willing to do the work. So it's like that with associates. So we'll say, oh, that's not my expertise. I can't take a deposition. I can't do this. But if you're willing to do the work, you're much more likely to succeed. And you have to have some sort of selling proposition. And this proposition that I was telling you about is someone that would do the work and someone that may have saved the company money, someone that had good judgment that they got out of some place where there was a lot of illegal stuff going on. So yes, you can. I don't see why you can't talk about that, the fact that the company went bankrupt and the reasons why. That's what I would recommend. And I think that could help you. So this is a good question as well. Thank you for the person that asked it. Okay, I've been practicing a niche area of law and client retention is a constant concern. How does a lock-in approach address unique challenges faced by attorneys specializing in less mainstream legal fields? So that's actually a good question. It's a very good question. If you're in a niche practice of area of law, which is actually very smart, the way to get business is to be the most visible person in your practice area. That's it. If you're the most visible person in your practice area, meaning you may do, I'm just trying to think of some examples that I've seen. I was talking to someone last night that had used to work at Xerox. And believe it or not, copiers, I don't know why we're coming back to copiers today, but are extremely sophisticated. I mean, they have to shoot like lasers and things that put ink on them in a certain way. But there's patent attorneys that specialize in very niche things. They may work on, I don't know, like a component of a laser that shoots through lenses. There's just different types of things. And those kind of attorneys, by the way, that are very niche, all they have to do is find a couple of firms that have that practice area that do that, or they have clients, or they have to find clients that they can work with to do that. So that will be helpful. But the best way to be visible is to be the person that does nothing but that. You define yourself on that. You write about it. You network with other attorneys and tell them what you're doing. Because what happens with a lot of cases and things is the attorneys that know the most about it, other attorneys that don't do that work at other firms will start referring people to them. But you have to be visible. And maybe client retention is hard because these are one-off type of transactions. Sometimes you may be able to think about other things that the client needs and keep them going. So how does that work? What may happen is this is just an example. It's not a great example, but I'll just give you an example. You may be an attorney in a small to mid-sized law firm helping your client merge or acquire a smaller company or something like that. And so you do work on that. And maybe they found you because you're expertise in that. But then as you're working, you start finding things the client may need to do. You might say, oh, your corporate papers are out of date. You need to structure something this way. You need to do that. And so you keep coming up with work, and you come up with one project after another, and you choose the one that's the best and you tell them about it. And if you do a good job on one project, they'll give you more. Partners, you can do that with partners. You can say, I think there's a very client that's willing to pay a lot of money for stuff. It's a huge corporation. You can suggest more work to the partners. The way partners make more money, the way businesses make more money is they just never stop. They never stop trying to find work and things to be done. That's not unethical. There's always work that you can do in a business to improve it. Always. And you need to figure out how you can be in a position to offer that sort of stuff. And if you are, you're going to succeed and you're going to do very well. And if you're not going to. So you need to figure out how to continually get work from people. You need to figure out how to continually get work from clients. You need to figure out how to continually get work from partners. And then but you need to be visible in your practice area. So people need to see you. They need to think of you. You need to look like the expert. You need to give talks and all this sort of stuff. And this is what the best attorneys do. They're visible and they're in a niche practice area of law. I just tell you another example about franchising. I don't know why I'm coming up, but I took a class in franchising when I was in law school, and it was a very boring class. But the worst part of it was they had us all go to this presentation, and that some franchising attorney was giving at Charlottesville. And he was from, I don't know, Hunter Williams or some firm like that, a great firm in Richmond, and very traditional, wearing a bow tie and a nice suit and things, and gave this 1 hour, 90-minute presentation about franchising. And I was not a good listener. I was making faces at people that I knew during this, like, this guy is so freaking boring. And not only that, but I could hardly understand what the guy was saying. His slides seemed to be talking about nothing. And I don't think anybody in the audience, so maybe the professor understood it, but I'm not sure that anyone in the audience understand what he was talking about. And so when he finished talking, he'd invited all of these business owners and people with franchises in Charlottesville. I don't know how he found out who they were, but he had invited them all. And there was probably 30 or 40 of them there. And then after he gave this boring presentation about franchising law, which had all of these slides about how great he was and the capabilities of his firm, there was a line of people talking to him and taking his card. And I don't know that anyone in Charlottesville was trying to do this with franchise owners. So he was suddenly getting all this work from people and acting like he didn't even be nice to people, but just getting all this work. And the reason is because he was being seen. That's a niche area of the law. So if you're seen by people, you'll do very well. I hate to give this example, but I talk to these trust and estates attorneys all the time. And a lot of them, what happens is they get out of school and they can't get jobs, or they were accountants. There's just all sorts of things. Or they got a job and they don't like it. And so they go into trust and estates, which is a niche area of the law. And they mail letters to nursing homes and and invite people to these lunches where they give a talk. And I've seen people have trust and estates businesses that are doing $1 million over a year just with that attorney. If you're in a niche practice law, the only thing you need to do is be visible to the right people. That is really the answer. And then also, if you're visible, then you'll continue to get business. And the other thing is, if you are getting business, then you need to always find work to be done. What does that mean? So the largest firms, the most successful firms, the ones with huge revenues of hundreds of millions of dollars, what they do and what they're good at is and not all of them, a lot of times some of the most successful ones, they will overwork matters. They will have memos written. They will take trips to the client's offices that may not be necessary to ask questions. They will create giant teams of people to review documents. It's all, they will do all these things. They will postpone the settlement or litigation. They will do all sorts of stuff to keep the bills coming. Also, they will initiate legal proceedings by upsetting the other side sometimes when things could be worked out. So this is how it works. Your job in a law firm, now I'm not saying all this is ethical, but your job in a law firm is basically to constantly figure out how to generate more work. It's the same thing in-house. It's the same thing with clients. You keep people paying for the work. And as long as they're getting an economic value for it, I don't think there's anything unethical about it. But if you hire one law firm, like a very big, prestigious law firm for a case, the cost is going to be far different than if you don't. So I had one case or one firm where I had an employment dispute. And I asked, what is the budget for this? And it was a big, firm. Then they basically wrote down, over $1 million for some stupid case that, wasn't worth very much. And then I had the same experience with a smaller firm where it was less money. Big firms will find out things to be done. And this particular firm that was giving me an estimate was going to do jury studies and all this sort of stuff. And that's what people do. I hope that answers. Sorry. You see. Okay. So this person says, I've been practicing the niche area of the law and client retention is a constant. Oh, sorry. That was a different one. Okay, this last question that I was going to answer, it was from anyway, it doesn't matter, but The person said, they said, I interview for a lot of jobs and am in a mid-career transition. How can I never get the jobs I interview? Something along those lines. Again, when you're interviewing with people, with firms, there's a lot of articles and webinars I've given about interviewing. But in terms of this particular question, how do you get the positions you're interviewing for? Why aren't you getting these jobs? What's happening? What are you doing wrong? These are the questions that you have. And why aren't you getting these jobs? Most of the time when you get jobs, they find people that look better. That's all. That you're better. So and that's it. What are they looking for? I'll talk about this for those of you that have been on these webinars several times before. You'll see that I talk about this almost every webinar, but this is what they're looking for, firms and people. They don't always articulate this, but this is really what it comes down to. Let me ask this question. We do the job long term. Can we like you? All these sorts of things that they're asking. So what happens to older attorneys, and why is it more difficult for them to get the job? Well, a lot of them, I'm sorry to be so direct about this, but they have families, they have commitments. If it's a transition, their experience may not match. They may not, or the older person may not want to work the hours. They may be this unhappy with past failures and have a chip on their shoulder. They may not have worked. They may not have worked in some time. So they may not have worked and their skills may not be. So these are all things that law firms are asking. So you have to be able to overcome all of these things when they're asking if you can do the job. Will you do the job long term? These are also, how many jobs have you had? How long have you stayed there? Have you taken a break and want to come back, which is not good. Taken a break and want to come back. So this is people, if you were interviewing, I just keep giving these kind of examples, but if you were interviewing someone to be a nanny for you and they had new jobs every 3 months, that's not good, right? If they haven't worked as a nanny in 10 years, that's not good. You need to put yourself in a position where the people that you're interviewing with believe that you can do the job that you do. You don't talk about needing time off. You don't talk about your requirements. You can, but if you do, it's more likely than not to lead to problems, and they're not going to hire you because they're going to want to hire someone that's going to work the hours, that's going to, I don't know, to work fine, to do work enthusiastically for younger people. That's meaning associates and things like that. So if you can do that, then you believe you can work enthusiastically for younger people. That's what they want. So when you're older, again, I don't have any problems personally with older people, but all of these things come into play. So you need to look like you can do the job. You also need to look like you can do the job long term. So does that mean you're going to commit? Have you taken time off? What has been your previous jobs? Have you committed to a practice area? All these things are people are going to ask. They're asking this when they look at your resume. They're asking this when they bring you on. So are you committed? Is this your dream job? Do you want to stay there for the rest of your career? And by the way, everyone that has multiple jobs and switches jobs every 6 months or 2 years always goes into the next interview and says, this is a place it's time for me to commit someplace and this is what I want. And a lot of times the same people will leave very quickly and do the same thing. Will you do the job long term, by the way? This is very important. This is something that everyone should understand. If you are at a big firm and you try to move firms after being there a year or 2 years, that's okay. Another big firm will hire you probably, but the market's okay. I mean, you can get into another big firm. But if you're unhappy at the next firm after a year, you're going to have a very difficult time getting a new job because it's just going to look like you're hot. And if you do get a job and you stay at the next firm a year, it's basically buyer beware. You're not going to commit. And that's what they think. So you have to look like someone who's commit. Every time I've hired a recruiter, if I hire almost all the time, but most of the time, if I hire a recruiter that was at their last job for 8 years and they come to work for me, they almost always will stay a similar length of time, if not longer. So that's just how they operate. Some people commit to jobs, others don't. If they've been at their last job for 6 months or a year and a half or 2 years, they're going to work for me for the same amount of time. So why would I invest training and money and things in people like that when I know they're not going to commit? And then manage is just a big one. I'm sorry to talk so much about this one question, but these are among the most important things that you can do. And if you find, I do searches for these terms, can you be managed? Will you do the job long-term? And Harrison Barnes or BCG, you'll find a lot of articles about this. And this means, do you follow orders? Will you respect authority? Are you comfortable working for younger people, etc. So these questions are things that employers are asking, and being manageable, by the way, is a huge thing. Someone else in this call or this webinar said they had a personality conflict. So you do not want this with your employer. You just don't. Because if you do this, it's going to basically say you can't be managed. So a lot of young attorneys lose their jobs because they can't be managed and so forth. If you're working for someone else, you need to be a soldier and not a judge. So generals can give orders. They can have personality conflicts. So they can not like their soldiers and things, but you have to do that. And then the next one is, do we like people like you based on your ability to connect with them, based on what they think of you, based on how you interact with them, based on their smile and energy and all that sort of stuff. So you need to work on that. And if you can make people like you, you have to understand that. And I will say too about this last one, do we like you? That this is something that you feel and connect or not with partners, etc., associates and partners. So sometimes the firm that you're working for you're going to be able to you go in there and you automatically feel comfortable. Some you don't. That's something you can't control. There's an article called Find Your Tribe or something on BCG. And I've actually would like to do a webinar on that. But I recommend reading that. You can search for it on Google or something, because this talks about how you find environments where you resonate with the people. And when you find that sort of stuff, you can do much better. Okay, here's another question. Yeah, and again, we're running low on questions. So if you have any in the next few minutes, I can answer them, and then we'll work through the ones that are. As a solo practitioner, I often find myself wearing multiple hats by managing my legal practice. How can the lock-in strategy be adapted for attorneys who may not have the resources of a larger firm? Are there practical tips for solo practitioners to implement this practice successfully? Okay, if you're wearing multiple hats, I don't know if you're saying that you're working in multiple practice areas, or that means you're managing your paralegal secretary. I don't know what you mean by that, which is okay. I can still answer the question. But you say, are there practical tips for solo practitioners to implement this approach successfully? I remember years ago when I was in law school, I wrote a book about personal injury attorneys. And as part of that, I traveled all over the country. I don't know what the hell was wrong with me at that time. But I traveled all over, something that a normal law student would do, but I was interested in the practice area. So I traveled all over the country interviewing personal injury attorneys. If I was interviewing with a law firm in San Francisco, I would go interview one there. And so I went into this one lawyer's office in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and to interview him. And he was very successful, had this good practice, was a nice guy. And I interviewed him. And what he said to me, I'll never forget. He said, a lot of people use me and they all come to me, and I don't really ever worry about losing clients to bigger firms because I have relationships about them. And so what does that mean? That means he shows up at their things. He visits them. He sends Christmas cards. He does gifts. He goes out to lunch with them. He does all these things to have good relationships with his clients and for them to only want to come to him. So if you go to a wedding of your client, if you go to something when something happens, if you're there and you're close to them, they're never going to want to use someone else. And they will respect you if you tell them they should use someone else. But that's one of the things that you can do if you're a generalist. And so I'm assuming you're saying that as a generalist. And so As a generalist, you can offer to do more work. You can tell them things that they should do. If you're working for them on on a personal injury matter, you can say, be thought about updating your trusted estates, things. And so these are all things that you can do, as a generalist. Now, if you're a specialist, all you need to do is just get out there and be seen and that sort of thing. So I had an interesting thing happen several years ago. I was in this lawsuit where I was suing someone over an option to purchase some real estate, and things had gone south. So I was doing this, and at the time that I couldn't find anyone that had any experience working on a transaction like this. I just been suing things. And so I searched, and finally I found an article by a solo practitioner working up north somewhere, San Francisco, I don't know, I'm in LA. And I called him, I interviewed him, I almost hired him. But my point is that I was the only person I found. So maybe you work on niche matters and you do things that other people know and they can see you. Or if you're a generalist, you have to concentrate on your relationships with your clients. I'm going to answer this. A lot of good questions here. Thank you for the answer. Okay, so how to choose a law firm you want it to be locked in. It's hard to tell the truth from doing informational interview. People only say good things about the firm. Okay, yeah. So a lawyer, ultimately, the law firm is your client when you're an associate. They provide the best customer service to partners possible. And you want to look like it provides good customer service. So I had an interesting thing happen to me when I was in law school, and I actually was pretty upset about it. And I'll tell you what happened. I was interviewing, I'm from Detroit, and I was interviewing with a law firm in Detroit called Hahnemann and Miller. And it's a good firm. It's one of the better, if not best law firm kind of in Detroit. It's just does very well. And I wanted to get a position there. I thought that if I go to Detroit, work in Detroit, this is the best firm. So this is where I want to work. And I certainly was able to get jobs, other firms there, but at the same time, this was the firm I wanted to work in. So I went into my interviews. I talked about how I wanted to get business. I talked about how I was going to work hard. I talked about all these things. And even though people I spoke liked me, I certainly did not look like someone that was out to do good work and please only the firms. I was there, I was saying I was in business and do all this stuff. And that was my priority. And so they knew that and not only that, but I just didn't look like someone that was going to provide all this customer service and things. And this was early on at the beginning. It was the first interview because I was in Detroit and then going back to Charlottesville for my second year of law school. So and I didn't get the job. And I ended up getting jobs, but I didn't get a job there, and it's where I wanted to work. So what happened? Then there was another kid in my law school that had been in my section. His father was a Episcopal minister, I think, and this guy didn't have a very good personality. He was just nice. He wasn't particularly interesting, probably never wanted to get business and that sort of thing, and just would do the work, and nothing extraordinary about his grades or anything. And not only that, but he was from Montana or something like that. And he interviewed with a firm. I think they might have come on campus or something, and got a position with him. And I was very upset. And I didn't understand for the longest time, like, why would they hire someone like that over me? The idea of that was they hired someone that they knew would basically put their head down, work, not question them, and maybe later on blossom into someone getting business, but not then. And so that was a lesson that I got from that, is that you need to look like someone that's going to provide the best customer service, that's not going to make trouble, that was motivated and that sort of thing. And I didn't understand what had happened, why I didn't get the job for the longest period of time. But as I got into this role and everything, I understood exactly what happened. I would have gone there and very aggressive and try to get business and not commit to the work and so forth as much as they wanted to. So when you go into an informational interview, an informational interview is not it's called a first round interview. They're looking to see kind of person, do you seem like you can do the work? Do you seem like you'll work hard? Do you seem like you won't make trouble? Do you seem like you like the firm? Do you have a good history? These are all things that they're looking for. And sometimes they won't like you. You're also, when you're going into a firm, for an interview, you're also trying to see if you connect with them, because if you connect with a law firm, you will get a sense of the way people are. And I think people are in the firm. I had an experience once where I went into this law firm. I think it was Morgan, Lewis and Bacchius in Los Angeles. And I went into this firm and I was incredibly uncomfortable. No, it's not a bad firm. It's a very good firm. I had a friend that worked there and he loved it, but it was incredibly uncomfortable for me. I just didn't feel, I don't know what it was. There was some energy there that I'm like, and then I've gone into other firms and it just feels comfortable. People and groups, there's an energy to them. And I'm not trying to talk in a psychology point of view, but there's an energy that different firms have. And maybe it's how the people act or what, I don't know, but it's just, there's something there. You have to be able to find your tribe, and you have to find, that's the article that Harrison wrote. Let me see, article on BCG. You have to be able to find your tribe and the people that you're most comfortable with. And a lot of times you can pick that up very quickly, but you need to figure out if you connect with people. And if you don't connect with people and you don't feel comfortable, there's no reason to stay there. I'm going to tell you one other example that's strange, but I believe there's some truth to it. So I've had an office in India for a long time that we do databases and things. But years ago, we had these people that practice this certain type of meditation and yoga and things. And they came and stayed with us. And they were there because I was doing a favor to the CEO of the India place and wanted to my India office and wanted to be nice to these people when they were there. And so I had them stay with me for a week or so. And they taught yoga before they went to give some big seminar or something for their training people. But anyway, so they stayed there and I did this yoga with them 2 or 3 times. But after they left, there was just like this kind of very calm energy in the room that may have come, or maybe it was just always there. I don't know, but that kind of, and I believe came from the stuff. And I think that people can go into houses that are haunted and get feelings, and that groups and people give off an energy. And so you need to choose places where you feel comfortable there, because if you feel comfortable in the firm, then you're going to do well, and certain people won't. So ultimately, you want to find places where you're comfortable. Some people that are practicing corporate law may go into a firm that does personal injury for some reason and feel like that's their calling. I've seen that, and they just bond and they connect with everyone. So this is what you need to try to do with things. A lot of questions here. Okay, let's see. We're almost done. Let me see. Can you elaborate more on how the lock-in strategy can lead to business development success? Okay, there's just a lot of things you can do to that. There's just tons of ways that people do this. One of the things is they join organization and sit on boards. People do that. They go out and meet businesses and try to learn. They provide value that that may not even ask for it, but need it. What else do they? They connect with people in a genuine way and relate to them. And often do not ask for work. I often wonder, why do all these attorneys join organizations and sit on boards? They could be hospitals. It could be hospitals, charities, etc. So why do they do that? They do that because basically what happens when you sit on these boards is you're around sometimes the hospital, if you're on board of a hospital, which when the hospital gets sued or when they have a transaction, they think of you, and you don't have to. It's always easier to hire people that when you feel comfortable with than some outside law firm you don't know anything. They sit in charities and things like that. These people, when you join these organizations, if you do it enough and over time, will feel obligated and ask you, if you're there, to hire you. Not just the organizations, but other people that are on the boards, people that own companies, people that run companies. And so this is one thing that people do, and that helps them get those clients. You can go about, sometimes people will do something like this. This is a very popular way to get business. And I'm glad we're having this person ask this question, because these are actually very good questions. Sometimes people will go out, and this is how people get business. They'll learn about a business in a space they have some familiarity with, and they've worked on cases or transactions of a business of a certain size and so forth. And they will somehow go out and meet the business and just say, I'm not trying to get business or anything. I'd just like to go out and meet. I'll just introduce myself to you. I work on a lot of things similar to you, and I've saved and something along those lines. When they do that, they don't ask for business. They may give them advice about things that other people have done in that line of work to do. We'll stay in contact, and they'll call up and check in on them and send articles or links to videos and things through that. And then sometimes they may even hold dinners and things and invite them to that. So this is one of the ways that people get clients. They get them many times by not asking for it. This is the other one of providing value. So if some way you could help businesses and people with business, that would help. And then being able to connect with people in a genuine way, meaning finding people that you're comfortable. I mean, people will join organizations, but sit on boards or just join clubs and whatever. Clubs aren't that popular to do that. But they'll do all these things to get that. Now, the other part about the locked-in strategy is that in order to lock in a business or something, once you get the business, you continually do a good job, provide customer service, and provide more and more work that are more and more suggestions and more and more work you can do. And once you have done that very well, you can do well. So let me just see here. This question, I'm sorry to wait so long to answer this. This question says, hello. First, this is one of the best trainings I've ever had in my life. I'm struggling in finding a job. I've immigrated to the U.S. I have a PhD in legal science with summa cum laude, an LLM from Brigham Young University. Okay, that's good. An MA in intellectual property law from an overseas university. And I served as a judge for 4 years. I passed the New York bar exam and lived with my family in Utah. I worked for 6 months at a big Washington, D.C. law. Please help me and guide me where to search and how to support my family. I built a very impressive resume and I'm ready to work as hard as possible, but I cannot prove myself. Please teach me where and how to perform. I worked in immigration law in Washington, D.C., but I'm eager to work in any other field. Okay, so this is a good question. I'm going to actually answer this in a way that applies to all people that are looking for jobs, because this type of question is something that, I think a lot of people may have that are searching for a job and wondering what they can do to succeed. So let me just go here. So this person I'm assuming is in Utah. I don't know why you're in Utah, but if you want to work in Utah, you're going to need to take the bar exam there. And that would be and I don't know if you can with an LLM, but if you can, then you need to get admitted in Utah. So that would be the first thing, because I don't know that you can work in Utah as an attorney without the bar. Immigration lawyers, and let's just say you're in Salt Lake. And this is very simple, clear advice, but it's something that you should understand. What most people do when they're looking for jobs, I'm not saying it's not very smart because most people do it, is they'll go on to sites like Indeed or some other examples, or LinkedIn. So they'll go on those sites and they will look for jobs. And all that means is they will use those sites and they'll be competing with other people for the same jobs. So if you are going to throw your hat into an advertised job, you will only get hired if the firm does not have better and willing applicants. That's it. If you do that, or you throw your hat and you're looking into an advertised job, the firm's only going to hire you if you're the best applicant. I'm sorry, but being from another country, no bar exam, 6 months of experience, etc., does not make you a good applicant. Let's talk again so let's talk a little bit about this. So where is this person from? Doesn't say what country, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, these things that I talked about earlier, where they're asking if you can do the job. In your case, you haven't taken the bar exam probably in Utah, so you definitely can't do the job. Your experiences with another legal system, not the U.S. legal system, so that may hurt you. You only have 6 months of experience, so that doesn't mean you can do the job. You've been in positions of massive authority, being a judge and things, So that doesn't mean you can do the job. Your experience is in immigration law, and yet you've got a master's degree in intellectual property law. So maybe that's something you actually really want to do. And you're older, and that may make people enthused, not as interested in hiring you. Will you commit? People from other countries often go home. People from other countries don't always understand the legal system and do well. So that's an issue. I don't have any doubt that you can be managed, but you have to be someone that goes from being a judge to a first year associate is probably going to feel superior to the people they're working for. They may feel they're smarter and they may, and all those things. And so that's going to hurt you. And then they may like you, so I can tell you a little bit about what I would do if I was in your situation. So what you need to do, in my opinion, is you need to figure out, you need to apply for jobs with firms no one else is doing, right? You need to, so action plan. You need to do that. So you have two options. There's a site I own, so I'm not full disclosure, but the site Law Crossing is basically looks at law firms and et cetera for jobs and in-house, everything. And those jobs are from firm websites, small publications, and most are not advertised. That helps you because you may be one of a few members or, few people applying. And Law Crossing is a subscription site. What does that mean? That means that the positions on there people are paying to look at, so there's fewer applicants. But the most important, so I think Law Crossing is a great way to search, but honestly, your best options are going to come if you're able to find law firms and attorneys to apply to that no one is applying to. So here we are, we're in Salt Lake City, and let me just see how many people are advertising things here. But there's all of these people that are, let me just see here. There's all of these attorneys that are advertising their services. And so look at all these different types of services they offer: citizenship, deportation, family-based, green card. So everything is being broken down into these practice areas. So you could literally, if you're an expert in asylum, you can apply to all these people. So all of these by sub-practice areas. And so this is very helpful for you because we can apply to those places. Now, why am I saying to apply to these types of firms? Because if you search for firms or firms on Google, et cetera, you are going to be able to apply to firms without openings that may be interested or flatter, but someone like you. And so that's the first thing. So you go and you search Google for different firms, and if you can find anyone that's similar to you, and you apply to those firms, and you apply without them having openings, you're going to be in much better shape. So the idea here is that you apply to firms that no one else is applying to. Law Crossing is one good resource, but there's still going to probably be applicants to firms that don't have an advertised job, just not as many. And you can look on law firm websites for jobs and so forth. But you just have to understand that your only way to get a job, especially with all these things that are holding you back, no bar, no all this stuff, you can move to New York and work there. You can apply to law firms in New York that aren't getting applicants. So you can search for jobs or firms in Rochester and Syracuse and say, hey, I'm admitted to the bar. I'd like to help you on a contract basis. You can do that. That's one way. You can take the bar, but you have to apply. The only way you're going to get a job, in my opinion, is applying to firms without openings. And I'll tell you one thing that I think is very interesting. So for at least 10 years, I had a law firm in Malibu. I closed it recently, 2 or 3 years ago, but I had this law firm. And what happened is the law firm was to do different matters if we had a dispute with a firm or whatever, or help them, different things. So the law firm is essentially doing work for me. And that's what it was. But that law firm showed up. If you search for law firms in Malibu, it showed up online. But anyways, for 10 years, I had this law firm. I can only recount 2 instances where someone walked into the law firm and said, I would really like to work for you. Here's my resume. I live in Malibu. And I would love to have a job locally and so forth. And actually there are 3 people that did it. And 2 of those people I hired. And one of them worked for me for a few years, So the point is that if you do this and you're able to find people who don't have applicants, you'll do very well. And out of those 2 people I hired, just to give you some background, one of them was absolutely horrible. Couldn't even write a sentence. Literally, it just wasn't good. And I never should have hired her, but I did. And so that's one type of that's a mistake that I made. But I kept the person on, but I didn't, because the person had walked in like that, I thought it was okay. Then I had another woman that I hired that was actually exceptional. But the point is, very few people apply or approach law firms and jobs without advertising. The most successful company in terms of getting jobs that I ever had was a company called Legal Authority, and people would sign up for that company, and we would mass mail their resume to firms in their practice area and the locations they wanted, and we'd send them a letter to mass mail, and people got tons of jobs, and it worked. We had to close it because it just wasn't profitable because you do all the printing and everything, but that works. So that's the thing. And then I'm going to give you 2 final suggestions. So 2 final suggestions. So I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, but I'm assuming your LDS, which is Mormon for everyone. And I don't know why you moved to Utah, but you can do affinity applications. It means you apply to people, church, called stake or whatever. And then, and that sort of thing that works, and networking, offering to do things, and people in that's a particular affinity group do helping each other. It's not that they won't, but you can do that. But you also, your ethnicity. So let's say you're from India. So maybe there's a lot of Indian immigration lawyers. So you apply to those all over and basically bond with them. And they probably have Indian clients, and they need someone that's Indian that speaks Hindi or a regional dialect. So that can be helpful. So that's what I would do. I would make sure that I'm able to answer. Okay, let me just see here. I think this is the last question. I'm very impressed by everyone who stayed around for these questions, because it was a lot, and it's been a long webinar. Most of them are. I hope, by the way, to do a really interesting one next week about hopefully about goal setting, but maybe not. We'll see. And then the week after that, we'll do one on probably the annual resume review, how we did them each quarter. On your customer service point, how important is it to have a quick turnaround from partners? I am often hesitant to negotiate deadlines while also putting significant time onto the work and balancing deadlines. Is it better to have a fast turnaround or more thorough work product? Okay, that's a good question. More thorough work product. That is important. So this is actually a good question. I'm glad that everyone asked that. You asked that. So more thorough is important. Sometimes you'll have deadlines and things you need to meet, but the problem is if you turn in work and there's problems with it, they will hold it against you. They will hold typos against you. They may hold bad conclusions against you. It's just not worth it for you to not do thorough work product. So many times trying to negotiate longer deadlines where you can actually do good work and provide the best work possible is much more professional than trying to rush work out. If you rush work out, even if you think you're doing a good job and doing the right thing about getting the work done as quickly and pleasing someone, but your odds of making a mistake go up. And if you make mistakes, they will hold it against you more than if you ask for extra time to complete the work. That's it. That's a great question. And I think something that will help everyone here is that you always want to get as much time as possible. Having more time will penalize you less than not doing a thorough job. Yeah, than not doing a thorough job. So if you give a quick deadline, you don't do it quickly, and you don't make mistakes, and you turn in something very good, the partner's going to be much happier with you than if you turned in work that was not perfect and had issues, but you got it done quickly, and they will hold it against you. Okay, let me see. Okay, this is a good question. So it's a late question, but I'll answer it. So we have this last question. If anybody has any more, I think this is our last question. Let me see. Yes, it's our last question. Sorry, that's wrong. But yeah. Hi, Harris. Thank you very much for your time and advice. And it was busy, so I kind of asked the question, if you don't mind, time to answer today. I do a federal clerkship at the trial court level. We're considering pursuing another one at the U.S. Court of Appeals. However, I want to work in a law firm in the long term. I'm in my late 30s. My clerkship will be 40 years old. I'm not sure whether I should pursue another clerkship or work directly for a firm in terms of my age. Any insights would be appreciated. Okay, this is a great question. Let's talk about age. Let's talk about clerkships, and let's talk about law firm jobs after clerkships. Okay, so let's talk about age. So if you're, let's say you're 38, whatever, 38 old, the president of the United States will be, if he wins another term, will be 83, 84, or 84, 85, right? If someone can be president at the age of 85, and again, I've seen this with lawyers, this means you have about 47 plus years left in your career. So I don't think that age is really that relevant. You certainly can make it relevant if you want, but a lot of times it's not as difficult to get a job when you're older. And a lot of people think, oh, I'm in my late 50s, I'm in this age. But in reality, attorneys that like their jobs and work hard, they practice very late in their life. Now, you don't necessarily need to, but you can, and that's the point. So you have all this time left in your career, and so I wouldn't do that. But the biggest thing that you need to ask, the biggest question that you need to understand is all these questions about can you be managed is a big one. A lot of times older attorneys aren't as open to being managed because they don't like working for younger people. So you have to look like you're manageable. You have to look like you will commit, meaning do the job long term, and then those are two of the big ones, and then being able to do the job. Let's talk about clerkships. If it was me, and I was doing, I think a federal district court clerkship is usually enough. So I would apply now with district court, or I'm assuming you're saying federal, or not it's federal, a district court, to everywhere you can. So you can apply to large firms, small firms in the area where you're clerking, firms in the area where you're where you're from, everything you can possibly do. And that's your district court. Now, if you don't get the jobs you want, then I would definitely clerk for a circuit court judge. That's, of course, it's very prestigious. And if you don't get a job, you'll probably have a better chance after a circuit court clerkship. It may improve your chances if it doesn't work with getting a job now with your federal district court clerkship. One of the mistakes that people make when they're applying for jobs with federal district courts is they apply only to firms with openings. You need to apply everywhere. Anywhere you can possibly see yourself working, you should apply to. You should, you can look on Law Crossing, which I'm not promoting, but you can find jobs that aren't advertised. You should apply to large firms, mid-sized firms, wherever you see yourself working, but you should apply. So that's important. And then the other thing that I would recommend, I see lots of people come out of in clerkships, apply to firms. I saw one this morning, want to go into like criminal, what else? Indian law. I saw one this morning in American Indians, sometimes employment, et cetera. So, and then appellate clerks want to go into appellate. So here's the deal. If you have a clerkship, as far as I'm concerned, if you don't have any law firm experience, the only jobs you should be applying to from a district court clerkship are commercial litigation. That's it. Now, if you're working in a courthouse and there's a U.S. attorney there and so forth, attorney's office, you can talk to them and may have a chance, but that's about it, is commercial litigation. So don't try to do all these other practice areas, because people that get hired for criminal law jobs are typically have some sort of experiences as just prosecutors and things. And just because you work for a judge doesn't make you qualify for that, especially in a law firm. Indian law, employment law, it's the same thing. You might get hired for an employment law firm and get a job there, but commercial litigation is really about it. And that's what a clerkship trains you for. That's what you should do. Now, there's also the issue, if you do too many clerkships, even though a clerkship is similar to practicing law, then you start to look like a government employee / academic and a law firm lawyer. So people that do too many clerkships do not have a lot of luck it's very difficult to get jobs. The most common track for someone doing clerkship is to do one clerkship or what you're talking about, which is the junior, the district to appellate. Okay, that's the webinar. Everyone, I think the next one we'll do in the new year. So this is the last webinar for the year. I certainly appreciate everyone staying on this for so long. I think that learning this type of material can really change your career. I receive emails and LinkedIn messages and stuff every week from people that have watched these things, sometimes only a couple, and it's changed the course of their careers. And so this information is all very important, and I hope it helped you. So next week, I think I want to do something in goal setting because that's always good for the beginning of the year, but I'm not sure. But I will announce that shortly. And thank you very much, everyone, for being on this webinar today. And I will see everyone next week. Thanks.